morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg. It's the 4th day of April 2024 and welcome to our show today. I have a gal that comes on the show or that she's in the chat quite often, and she sent me a Bible verse this morning, and I thought it was wonderful because I'm hearing a lot of people out there that are having a great deal of consternation, little stress about what's going on right now. And I don't know about you, but there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, but the real meat of what's going on out there, it seems like the silence is a little deafening. So in those times when we're facing problems, the best thing to do is go back to God and look at what he has to say just to give us an encouragement. So today, this is from Psalm 94, 19 through 23, and Debbie sent this to me this morning. When the cares of my heart are many, your consolations cheer my soul. Can wicked rulers be allied with you, those who frame injustice by statute? They band together against the life of the righteous and condemn the innocent to death. But the Lord has become my stronghold, my God, my stronghold, and let's hang on a second. My God, the rock of my refuge. He will bring back on them their iniquity and wipe them out for their wickedness. The Lord our God will wipe them out. And that's Psalm 94, 19 through 23. So there's an encouragement for today. I'm going to go ahead and put that on my Telegram channel after I'm offline. But just remember, whatever we're seeing that's happening out there, there's things that we can count on. The fact that God never changes and he's always good all the time. So we can go forward without any fear and just say, you know what? Papa's going to do something with us, and we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to think that we're carrying the world on our shoulders, because we're not. This is his game. You know, this is his earth. I guess not, game is a bad word. This is his world, and he's got things under control. So just go forward today and feel okay with it. My first guest is Jeff Buongiorno. I should have like theme music for Jeff the Beast Man. And I wanted to bring you on today. I talked to you a little bit about it before we got on today, because I am fundamentally offended when people I appreciate when they pass works on of other people, but I'm extraordinarily offended when they do not cite the person where the work came from. Chris Kyle is a perfect example of that in Michigan, and watching like Phil O'Halloran and Lori Skibo jump on it and Gateway Pundit and such. And it took them a little while to catch up and get their brains going in the right direction, right? But they took credit in order to steal the headline from the person that actually did the work. And why this bothers me so much, and I'm just saying this, Jeff has no idea what I'm going to say right now. I'm sure he's like going, oh gosh. The why this bothers me so much is because people that do the actual work are capable of doing that kind of work. They are capable, and they did it without anybody else's prodding per se. And if they did it one time in one direction, they're capable of doing it in another direction. And so instead of looking at the people who are spinning or taking their information, we need to go to the source and give them the credit that is due to them, so that we get the eyes not on, say, Gateway Pundit or on all these other things, but go to the source, the person who did the work, because guaranteed they're going to repeat it again. And they're going to do it selflessly just because they want their work out there. And one of the most selfless things that I heard you say yesterday in a text between a couple of us, because you texted me and said, oh, this is so exciting. This information is getting out there. He never drew the attention to himself. And I'm sorry, people, but Jeff was the one that was doing the work behind the scenes with a handful of other people out there. And no matter where you see this, Jeff needs the credit, as well as the people that stood with him, for doing this actual work, not the people spinning it. And shame on any of you for not going back there and giving him a voice to get out there. He's got the guts to run for office, and people are not giving him the credit due. He's going to get in office, and he's gonna tear the doors right off the hinges and go after the criminals in office, because number one, he's smart enough to do it. Number two, he's got a proven track record of not having to take somebody else's information, but get in behind the scenes and know what's going on. So with that said, welcome this morning, Jeff, the one behind the infrastructure crisis, the CISA information and that sort of thing, working with some really amazing people. And I have another one of your friends on next week, Wednesday, Todd Buffington again. And I got to tell you, I'm just really, really honored and grateful to know you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for the encouragement. Thank you for everything that you do. This all goes back. This investigation started back in at the Mike Lindell, a cyber symposium in Sioux Falls, and I've been focused in, as we titled our chat group, is election infrastructure, and this whole data drop, which it appears to be on socialsecurity.gov and the have voter registrations. This was brought to my attention by Marley Hornick initially, and Marley Hornick is with American Sovereign Group, and she's doing some great work, and she's the one that initially brought this to my attention, and I kind of I didn't let it go. I've been following it, and I've kind of connected the dots between, well, what is a 4-digit voter registration, and what we're looking at is a slow boil of laws that started back in 2002 with the Help America the Help America Vote Act, and that was that was recomposed over the years, and it got less secure. It made our elections less secure, and it really brought them to where they were federalized to a degree. And we never want our elections federalized, right? Each state is sovereign. But what the trend that I'm seeing, number one, is that you have these data dumps. They look like data dumps in Texas, 229,000. I had the numbers up. Arizona, they're just astonishing, and they don't make sense at all. They don't line up with other states. And if you want to, so getting back to the initial, taking credit and how this got out there, number one, Marley brought the information to me, and I just, I didn't let it go. I was like a pit bull with a bone trying to get this out there. And I do have further information that connects the dots that I'm working on, disseminating that to the people. But if you want to show my screen that I shared, this is up to this tweet that really drew attention to it is up to almost 63 million views, and it was by a account named End Wokeness, and so they tweeted this out, and I'm not sure if the screen is up. There you go. You can see the number of views here. That's quite substantial, and you have Elon Musk who commented on it, and now that it's out there, and now that every conservative news media group has reported on it, and I'm involved in some of these monthly Zoom meetings, and I've been calling this out in these Zoom meetings amongst the groups, and it never really got a lot of traction. And now the title of the next Zoom meeting is exactly this. So, having said that, I can't take all the credit. I did follow through and with this vehemently, and there are some folks out in the Twitter sphere who reposted and reposted and reposted, which finally got it to some of these big name accounts like N Wokeness and DC Drano. So I'm grateful for all of the folks involved in helping me get my posts and this information out. And I also did Real America's Voice. I want to thank Jeff Buongiorno. He had me on in August. The interview got truncated. I should say Trump-cated, because this was the day that Trump was at the Iowa in Iowa. There was the Iowa State Fair, and they cut into the interview in the middle of my explanation. So Jeff Buongiorno and Real America's Voice had this out there. I did John Frederick's Radio with Matt Rinaldi, the Texas GOP, and he didn't want to hear it. He said this is total nonsense, and I just found out now that he's not running for re-election, which I think is a good thing for Texas, because where there's smoke, there's fire. We still haven't gotten to the bottom of this, but I do have more information for everyone. And so that's as far as that goes. Taking credit. It's not about me. It's about getting the bringing the power back to the people, and just there's a lot on the cyber side now that is deeper and more difficult for people to grasp. That's next on the agenda to get out to the folks.
Well, and I appreciated talking to you yesterday because I met with a township clerk that is kind of in that we did everything right. There was no cheating here. And I really believe that she really believes that. And I showed her the map that Seth Keschel put out because I bought the counties of Ottawa, Kent, and Muskegon. And there's so many people that have this. Oh, it was fine, and this is the way it went. And the only way to combat this is to put real information out there, like you're putting out there, that is tangible and irrefutable. And I just want to thank you and everybody else for all the wonderful work that you've done. I'm just amazed and honored to stand with you.
Well, thank you for that.
I lost your camera there. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. I was just, I got crazy eyes. I got like 4 monitors going, so I don't want to look like I'm,
yeah, me too. Biden. And after a while, you're like,
I don't want to look like I'm Hunter Biden on a binge. So I want to share another screen, and this. So there's a couple of more points that I want to get through.
Okay, I'll take that one down.
I'll take this one down.
Remember, we have to remove that and then go back and put the other one.
So
we're getting this. This is real news for real people, by real people at the kitchen table. Sort of.
All right. So it's down or it's still up?
It's down.
Okay. Terrific. So let me make basically the next couple of things pertaining to this situation I want to get through are I want to present right now a statement by the Jane Nelson. She's the Secretary of State in Texas. So she came out and put a press release out yesterday afternoon. DC Drano, he put it out in a tweet. So let's just take a look.
Share that, and I'll add it to the.
I will share it in 1 minute. It is coming. 3, 2, 1. You should have it.
Bam.
Okay. So if we take a look at her statement, right, and this is something Lara Logan's been talking about, how you have to really dissect the words of politicians and what they mean. And what is my screen still up, or did I move it? Okay.
Well, it kind of went down, but yeah, you're up.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm sharing the entire screen, not the window. So I want to drill down on this tweet, and let's see. So it's larger for the audience.
I love having tech guys on because when things go like this, you can actually have somebody that understands how to run the technology, and it makes my job real easy because I don't have to find workarounds. Yeah.
So she came out with a statement, Jane Nelson, Secretary of State in Florida. In Texas. And so there have been recent and inaccurate reports about the voter registration process and ID requirements in Texas. Please see the statement from Secretary of State Jane Nelson below. It is totally inaccurate that 1.2 million voters have registered to vote in Texas without a photo ID this year. The truth is our voter rolls have increased by 57,000 since 2024. This is less than the number of people registered in the same time frame. So she's given us these statistics. So, but here's the crux of it, okay? She says when Texans register to vote, they must provide a driver's license or a social security number. Okay? She says when individuals register to vote with just a social security number, the state verifies that the social security number is authentic. So
which is not, it's crap. You can't do it that way.
Well, she uses the word Texans when she talks about driver's license. And then she uses the word individuals, which suggests that they're not Texans. So, why the change in semantics? And then we know that this is a lie.
Absolutely.
Well, because it goes on, while she goes on, while federal law allows individuals to register to vote without a photo ID, Texans must actually show proof of ID to vote. So how I'm reading this is she's talking about voter registration with a comma, and then she says Texans must actually show proof of ID to vote. So she's saying, again, Texans. She's not saying individuals. And here's the thing. Number one, she talks about these Social Security numbers are verified. They're verified by the same federal government who's been weaponized against the people at all levels. So
bingo.
That's the first call out. The second call out is she keeps flip-flopping from Texans to individuals and photo ID and Social Security numbers, which is exactly what I've been calling out on this, which is basically we've created two classes of citizens: those who vote by mail, who only have to provide a 4-digit Social Security number to obtain the ballot and to cast the ballot. And this is basic. My pinned tweet has Texas, Ohio, and Florida. In my opinion, the three most important states. You win those three until mail-in balloting, until mail-in votes. You won those three states, you won the country. That's a great, bellwether for the entire country. But now we know that they're into the densely populated urban areas, and they're pulling their fast ones on us. And this is basically, in my opinion, this is the most important thing that they need to execute in order to pull off a steal. And that's the use of the 4-digit Social Security number. Secretary Nelson is saying that you need photo ID if you're a Texan to vote, but that's only true if you vote in person. And there's even holes in that, but I want to stay pointed. The fact of the matter remains that you can request a vote by mail ballot by only producing 4 digits of a Social Security number, and you could cast that ballot. And she's lying. This press release is a flat out lie. She's deceiving the people.
Tremendously misleading.
And you have the same thing. You have there was tweets. I don't have them readily available by Stephen Reischer from Maricopa County. He's saying that it's patently false. So my thing is, and maybe these registrations, which this is the disagreement that Matt Rinaldi and I had. I said this has to be looked into. He said no, and the funny thing is she's using the same statistics that Jane Nelson is using. We've increased 57,000. It's the same talking points, and it's the same talking points that when I went to Tallahassee and I questioned the state legislators on why these election laws in Florida have been weakened. Well, we want to make voting easier and cheating harder. But it doesn't work that way. But my point is, they all have the same talking point. It's the term leadership capture. They're all coached, say the same things when they're challenged on this. The local clerks, the person that you saw yesterday, everything's perfect. That could never happen. I've approached some council members, and there's like, well, the government takes care of that, so I'm not going to question it. So this is
yesterday it was, we did a hand count and it matched the tapes and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't think you understand the failure points along the entire system. And we need to be open to the fact that, and I think this is true with all of us, that all of us need to be open to the fact that things aren't the way it always appears, and that we don't have all supreme knowledge of stuff. So we have to continue to ask questions and dig down into areas that we may not be familiar with.
Well, and this is where this really eats at me, and it's like everyone else, we're very concerned with what's going on. Mm-hmm. But I've seen things that I can't unsee on the technical side, and I'm pretty good at connecting the dots. And the recent law changes that have been dropped in lockstep by multiple states. Number one, Social Security numbers in general were never meant to be ID. I mean, it was plastered on our Social Security cards. And this is the scheme that they've come up with. Basically, where are these numbers coming from, right? Someone is putting through these numbers, whether you believe Jane Nelson, or you believe Stephen Riescher, or you believe Garrett Archer, who's always defending Maricopa County. He's called a data guru or something data guru on Twitter. And they're all they're defending this. Well, they're not registrations, but there's so much volume. And where are these numbers being pushed in from? And I believe they're being pushed electronically, and there's a connection between the CBP1 app and this data transmission. And now we're looking at this is cyber warfare. This is a war on our elections, because we can further connect the dots to CISA, right? CISA is basically this, the censorship nerve center that was censoring anything that was any kind of comments that were derogatory towards the 2020 election. They had Chris Krebs, the director, who came out and said it's the most secure election ever, the 2020 election. We know this is nonsense. We know that CISA is a censorship nerve center of the country. They're working with different agencies. Mike Benz did a great hit on this. Tucker Carlson, episode 75. Everyone should watch Tucker Carlson, episode 75, and it explains how CISA and these NGOs are all working together. So what's going on now from putting the tea leaves together, taking this information and looking at a recent executive order signed by Joe Biden stating that CISA must grant unique privileges to its contractors. And this pertains to critical infrastructure. Our nation's, our elections are considered critical infrastructure, but we have to take a look back at the .gov Act. And the .gov Act of 2019, it gave CISA authority to become what's called a top-level domain, TLD. In tech, we love our acronyms. TLD, top-level domain registrar. So they're on par with GoDaddy and Network Solutions, which the government should not be in business. They basically are, a competitor now to GoDaddy and Network Solutions and some of these other ones. Cloudflare. So let's introduce Cloudflare. So now what CISA did is they're going to all of the local voting jurisdictions, and they're saying you have to have a top-level domain of .gov. At the end, you have .com, you have .gov, you have .org, .edu, etc. So anything under .gov now, CISA is the top-level domain registrar. Very important. They're also forcing the use of Cloudflare, and I recently became pretty proficient with Cloudflare. It's a newer technology, and what they've implemented is something called Zero Trust Network Architecture. And I don't want to get too technical, but basically, if you're DNS, so DNS is very important. This is where the entries are that map the URLs to the IP address that we can resolve websites. There's also something called an MX record for email, and there's some security settings for email that basically decides whether email is spam or junk or to be blacklisted. So CISA now, as top-level domain registrar, every single .gov domain is on a Cloudflare DNS server, which means that you can join this. You're basically joined to the Zero Trust Network Architecture, which is one big global network. Now, it makes it very simple, and I use this professionally, where you just send an email out to a domain, that person accepts it, and they become part of this global network with a little tool. We used to call it a VPN, right? A virtual private network. You had to click on it, go to your work. People still use it. It's very popular, but it's a great technology, but it's easy to leverage. So you open up what's called a warp client. You get your email sent to your domain. You accept it because it trusts you, because your domain matches the top level domain. Now you fire up your warp. It's called the warp client, and you're part of this global network. So now CISA has control of this, and they grant unique access to their contractors. This is clearly stated. I think it's Executive Order 14029. So now we have what now. You take a look at that. You take a look at what happened with the SolarWinds Orion breach, and every voting jurisdiction had this management software running, which basically now we don't need to have a big huge breach like that because we just handed our sovereignty, our keys to the castle, our security to CISA and any top level domain that has .gov as their extension for their for their environment, for their infrastructure. So this is very concerning. These registrations, they're not, basically we're exchanging data, we're exchanging identities. They're flying back and forth between the SSA.gov, between the states. We don't know where they're going to land. We don't know if they're going to push them directly to a poll book. We don't know if they stole those 70 identities from AT&T because they needed more, right? You heard about the breach from AT&T.
Expand on that one.
They said 7.6 million. Now it's up to 70 million. So basically,
it's 70 million now.
Yeah, we're potentially impacted. So this basic global network that they've constructed through executive orders and passing, seemingly innocuous laws like the .gov Act of 2019, and then there was one in 2020. But basically, you now have CISA, who's under. Who's the director of CISA? Who does CISA report up to? DHS, the people, Mayorkas, the people that are executing this border invasion, or now have this umbrella under them. This is the hitmen on the side of the cyber warfare. And these registrations, I don't care what Jay Nelson says, I don't care what Garrett Archer says, I don't care what Stephen Riescher says. The potential for fraud is amazingly high, and we cannot give blind trust and faith to these organizations. We've seen it already. They stole 2020. I don't care what anyone says. They stole 2020. But now the nexus between CISA, between the executive order, between .gov, between Cloudflare, between Warp Client, between all these registrations that are being, that the states are basically saying, okay, we'll give you a social security number, Mr. Federal Government, and you okay it. I'm not okay with that, and no one should be.
It is unbelievable how connected all of these. This is really an incredible master plan of taking down the United States and our elections through so many different coordinated organizations. Have you ever done like a relationship mapping on this so that people could see a graphic on it?
Have I done? I have not. Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, that would be great. It's I'm working
can help you with that. Actually, I can help you with that because it's something I'm working on, is doing a relational mapping.
Well, yeah, I'm down and dirty, and I'm looking at the tech side. I'm looking at that. Basically, there's no one fighting. There's a guy from CISA, between Chris Krebs and a guy named Paul Rosenzweig, and you have all these top level people that are basically orchestrating this. There's no one countering on the cyber front. There's very few people countering Mark Elias too. And my theory on this whole thing of 4-digit social security as being ID, to me, it's a violation of the 14th Amendment Equal Protectionism Clause, and that needs to be tried in court. You can vote, you can request a ballot, you can vote with the social security number, only the last 4 digits. Number one, never should have been accepted as identity. Number two, if I'm a person, if I'm an in-person or early voter, I go to vote, I have to show photo ID. So there you have two separate processes that are separate but unequal. But I want to just bring up one more point, and hopefully I can find the screen. I'm going to stop my camera so I don't have the crazy eyes going back and forth. And let me try to find this this tweet that I put out yesterday that is very, very consequential. So, okay, so here's one thing, two things now. I'm still sharing, correct? Okay.
Yeah, I just put it up.
Crazy eyes are done. I'm back on the camera. So the most recent data dump on socialsecurity.gov. So basically they're a few weeks behind. I think it was yesterday, was April 3rd. They just released March 23rd. They left off Texas. All of a sudden, you have this tweet going viral, 62 million views. The Social Security Administration website that puts out the data that we're supposed to trust omits Texas. Is that coincidence? Did someone, just have I mean, so is this intentional? I mean, I think so. Why is
how convenient? How convenient
is
of
that?
them.
Okay, so now I went further and I looked back in the Wayback Machine, and so let me just see if I can pull it up quickly. And yeah, so this this woman Kim Wexler, I don't know her. I mean, I think that's an actress's name from like one of those Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad. I'm not sure if that's her real name, but she's got a bigger following on Twitter. She retweeted a lot of my stuff and got this out there, for the other guys to pick up. But here's the clincher. So these registrations are supposed to be manual in nature and used for the greater good. Everybody has to register to vote, and we need them, and we can't block access. But here, let's just take a look at this. So when did COVID start? When was it? So I'm looking back in the Wayback Machine not too long ago with our COVID pandemic. So it was really bad right around March 11th, 2020. Remember the first day they banned the flights. I never forget. I was in Hartsfield Airport that day. I had to fly out that day. It was like Star Wars bar, watching everybody come in and out. But I know so we all know this is history of our country that everything was shut down. Remember April 2020 was a terrible time. So wouldn't you think maybe that these transactions might slow down during COVID? The county agencies are closed. No one's going for driver's license. The week of March 21st, I took a look at Texas, 64,000. So where are they coming from? If these agencies are closed, how are there 64,000? And the next week, I don't have the slide made for, but it goes back up to the 100,000. So this is my point. It's cyber warfare. They're being pushed into the system somehow, some way. Jay Nelson might say, "Oh, this is crazy. This guy's put a tin hat on him." Those registrations don't show up. They're going somewhere. It's intentional. This is by design. It's not just something that we can ignore. And it culminates. You connect the dots with CISA being a top-level domain registrar, with Cloudflare. All of their DNS is in Cloudflare DNS servers, which now joins them to the zero trust network architecture of a global wide area network, where basically by sending an email to a domain, maybe it's palmbeach.gov, now you spoof an MX record, not spoof it, you create another email server, which we saw it when we did our forensics, and the LA Times wrote an article about this presentation that I did at CPAC, that these guys are crazy and you should arrest them for having connections. But we found Exchange servers running in virtual machines on the host server. So you have like a parent and a client, a parent and a child, host and a client. So these virtual machines are running on the parent server that they used in Mesa County, and we see Exchange email servers running. And we all know that multi-factor authentication, you want to get your email verified, you get that email, it comes from that, you verify it. So this whole can of worms has basically needs to be examined, because the Cloudflare, the culmination of CISA becoming a competitor to GoDaddy and Network Solutions as a top-level domain registrar, is a formula for failure for the entire system. Nobody's looking at it. No one's connecting the dots.
Well, it's being rigged. I mean, completely rigged at such a base level that, say, let's just talk about the clerks and everybody else. They would have no idea that this is running behind the whole thing. Yeah. Because they're looking at their little piece of the pie. And as you said, they're not connecting it to the fact that there's this whole infrastructure running underneath it that's going to subvert it no matter what they do.
Well, it's a coordinated slow boil. First of all, the social security number, it cannot be accepted as ID. And they're also playing games with the social security number and the connection between the job numbers reports. So they're looking at the numbers, the social security number. They've reduced us to 4 digits or 9 digits, the entire social security number. But basically, if I go out and my social security number is, I get a new job. It's a side job. It's a night job. It's a part-time job. That counts as a new job, right? In the job number report. So those numbers are totally skewed. I don't know how they're figuring out unemployment, right? I'm not digging into that right now. This is more important. We have to, 2024 is do or friggin' die. But I believe that every time a person gets a second job, that job is knocking someone off the ledger who's unemployed, and they're saying, "Oh, we got 3.7% unemployment." I don't believe any of it. I don't believe GDP. It's everything is revised. But
I don't believe the inflation rate that they're quoting. I don't believe any of it.
No, nothing the government is telling us can be trusted. We see socialsecurity.gov. I want to end. Is your next guest coming on?
It will be a little bit. You've got. I think they're going to come on probably close to 10, but so you got time.
Okay, so I'm the recap. The main takeaways here are you have the Secretary of State coming out and putting a patently false statement, press release on her website. Okay, it's disproved already that it's not true. I don't know if she's lying, but I think it's intentional. I looked her up, Jane Nelson, and she was 20 years in the Texas Senate. So she's a skilled politician. She used the commas in the sentence where you need photo ID to register to vote if you're a Texan, but if you're an individual and you need a social security number, like this run-on, almost like a run-on sentence, the semantics that she used is something that I learned from Lara Logan on how to really dissect their statements, and it's obvious that she's separating Texans and photo ID and individuals. Number one, just another red flag. Second red flag, why did have reporting exclude Texas on the March 23rd data dump that was available to the public on April 3rd, the night after the Elon Musk and wokeness DC Drano, Donald Trump commented on all this, went viral. The next day, they withhold Texas. Number three, how was there 64,000 of these registrations, transactions, whatever you want to call them, the week of March 21st, 2020, in the height of the pandemic? How did this happen? I believe it's a data exchange. I believe the CBP One app is part of the equation. And this is all under the purview of a guy named Alexandra Mayorkas, who is the director of the DHS, who is under impeachment by the House of Representatives, and who the House of Representatives decided to fund, even though they were accusing the man of a crime. So it's a flat out shit show.
You can't even make this stuff up. You couldn't make it up if you tried.
No, you couldn't.
And are you finding a lot of people that are pretty well open to what you're having to say on this? Are the people in your area, your voters too, for your run, are they listening to you?
It's, we got to talk about
the news is trying to silence you.
Yeah, I ran last cycle. There's nothing's changed. So I call on every America First candidate. You have to join if you really legitimately America First, and you're not a selected candidate, and you're not a rhino. What chance do you have to win? So I'm not. I fought the battle, and I really, honestly, I never expected to beat Brian Mast, and I went into that race very late because I knew that Palm Beach County was so corrupt. I can show you data on Palm Beach County. I can show you that there's a company called what the heck is it? I forget the name of it right now. Cornerstone Solutions, and Cornerstone Solutions is a vendor for the Palm Beach County Supervisor of Elections. Her name is Wendy Satori Link. She was appointed by Governor DeSantis because we had a corrupt Democrat who DeSantis fired. Now he appoints this woman, Wendy Satori Link. Now she says she's going to serve one term and she's going to clean things up and get out of there. She doesn't want to stay there forever. What does she do after that term is up? She switches to Democrat and she runs for re-election. So now we've been stuck with her for like, I don't know, 7 years or something. But here's my point.
So she's a
There's
liar.
a vendor that she pays called Cornerstone Solutions, a Palm Beach County supervisor of elections vendor that she's paid thousands of dollars to as a consultant, is also the campaign manager of the Palm Beach County Sheriff and of the supervisor of elections. And there, if you look at this at the filings for the for donations, it's called FEC in the Fed. I forgot the name in the state. I was more concerned with Fed as a federal candidate, but the sheriff paid Cornerstone Solutions as a political advisor for mailings on December 15th and September 30th, right before the 2020 election, $200,000. So this is the same vendor who is a contractor for the supervisor of elections, who has this, unique access, the exact language that they use in the executive order. I think it's 14029 on CISA. So we have all this unique access going on. So, I'm not going to run around and kiss babies when we have CISA stepping on the people, censoring the people, and creating a global network to basically pass along the data that they're showing these numbers, the data, the records, the transactions. We're seeing them on SSA.gov. So for me to go around and kiss babies and run for Congress, well, this is an open issue. It just doesn't make sense. And any America First candidate should know that. I can't say that for Donald Trump, because Donald Trump, has the ability to swamp and to beat this whole thing. So I'm not calling out Donald Trump, number one. 100%.
The rightful president of the United States.
But you have candidates like me. How can I go up against Brian Mast when he's on Fox News twice a week and he talks about the same 5 talking points?
That's a great point, because right now Fox News is no better than anybody else and of the fake stream media. And I think everybody should be aware of this and be done with this nonsense and stop listening to these pay-for-play news stations that are out there, and go to independent journalists, truly citizen journalists who are actually digging into things, such as yourself, who was digging into this and then also is running for Congress. Because all of the fake stream news get their talking points. They're nothing more than part of the machine.
Well,
Fox News is best.
When I ran for Congress, I had my own unique access to the supervisor of elections, and they invite you in, come look at the ballot, blah, blah, blah. So, I started asking questions to the IT guys. There's something called IDRAC, IDRAC for Dell, and ILO for HP servers. And this is basically a back end. Integrated lights on is ILO. So if the server is offline, it's plugged in, but the power isn't all the way up. It's plugged in. It means the ILO, internal lights on, and you can have it. So we use this for management tools. I do managed services for my clients. We do hosting. We do all kinds of stuff, and sometimes the power might go off, but it's still plugged in. And you could come in through a back door. Either if it's a Dell, it's called the iDRAC, and if it's HP, it's ILO. They both have them. And there's your connection, right? Your traffic is not in any logs. It's undetectable. And I asked them so I have my unique access. I go in for the LNA test, which is total bulk wrap, and I started asking them about ILO. What do you guys got going back there? HP's, Dell's? Oh, I forgot what it was. It was Dell or HP. Oh, so you got iDRAC? Yeah, you guys can connect, and yeah. I'm like, well, I started digging in on that, and we started to get the sweaty upper lip, and you could you could tell that they're like you're hitting the nerve center, and through my access as a candidate, I was able. So this is part of the reason I switched kind of last minute, and everyone's saying, oh, you're carpet bagging to the next district north, which still is part of my county. But there was a woman, she's America First woman, Melissa Marsh. She's like, oh, you're a rhino, you're coming in to split the vote. I'm like, no, I really just want access to 3 counties, because that district covers Palm Beach County, Martin County, and St. Lucie County. So I, wanted to get a feel for what's going on in those 3 counties and how they're handling elections, and the tone of the people. And we have problems in Florida. You know, I called out Wayne Allen Root. He said that Florida is the gold standard. By no means will we the gold standard. If you put it this way, if your local voting registrar, if your secretary of state, anything voter related, where there's data and where there's you have DNS entries for your firewall, your email is .gov, and you're on Cloudflare. If you're a public official out there, if your domain ends in .gov and you're on Cloudflare and this is your registrar, go check. You have no security. CISIC and their contractors have unique access. You have no security. Don't let them fool you.
Well, and here's another thing that I'm kind of wondering as you're saying this. If they've got backdoor access to all of this, isn't this a kind of a security for all the people that are in the government too, to put them in a position to potentially be blackmailed by putting things on, on their servers or things that they didn't put out there? Is that potential? Do you see that as a potential problem?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm seeing.
I don't think they, I think that these, we're under leadership capture. I mean, and is it, done electronically? Is it done, the Black Eye Club? I don't know. I want to stay to the points and the risk.
I understand, but I mean, that's an important point there too, is that to raise the temperature here on the threat level that is there, because this is far-reaching implications. So
my point is too, I saw the Supervisor of Elections handbook, and it recommends that you go to a top level domain of .gov. And I went through all 67 voting jurisdictions. There's 67 counties in Florida. Each one has its own voting jurisdiction. Each one has its own infrastructure that has a server that serves that county. And 30 of the 67 were on .gov. The other 37 still were on .com. And if you look at the 30 of these 30 voting jurisdictions equaled 15 million of the 7 million people in Florida. But the jurisdictions like Santa Rosa that were on .com, it was 80-20 Democrats to Republicans. So it's not a high-value target, right? .gov, they didn't push the issue. And I don't know if they're retaining their sovereignty, if the SOE is smart enough to say, no, I'm good with my own .com. I don't want to use Cloudflare. I want to stay off this global network. I think they are slowly acquiescing and turning things over, because I've been staying on top of that. I've been checking both .com and .gov, and some of them are running side by side, and that's not a good sign. But you could tell it was prioritized, where Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, that's where most of the heavily dense population is. They were on .gov first. And I also had the pleasure of paying my property taxes for Palm Beach County due March 31st. And I went to pay the Palm Beach County, and you would think if they wanted to secure it, really tight security on, this is people's, their addresses, this is their parcel ID, this is their property, this is what they've worked all their life for, right? We hear about this, we hear about squatters, but we also have the electronic squatters too, right? Which is a problem that's been going on for a very long time, where they steal your title. But if this .gov, so here's my point, if .gov is so superior and so much secure, which my feelings on it, why isn't the Palm Beach County property appraiser, where you pay your taxes, where you put your credit card, where your domicile is, where the most people, it's the biggest investment that they have is their house, is their property. Why isn't that behind a .gov top level domain? I asked that to Ann Gannon, our property tax collector. So it's making no sense why .gov is in voting in Palm Beach County and in Florida, but still our tax collectors and all of our vital information, probably social security numbers, credit card numbers, parcel numbers, addresses, deeds, titles, whatever it may be, it's still .com.
What's your thought on that? Why are they doing it that way?
My thought on that
is really only interested in sabotaging the elections.
I'm focused on yes. I only have so much bandwidth, and we have 8 months until 7 months until the next election. RNC has to step up. Someone has to step up. You know, I mean, if Elon Musk would just charge an extra $10 a month and put that towards a legal fund, I'm sure that, you know, all the 52 million people that viewed this tweet and who commented on this situation, we paid $10 a month for a couple of months to go after, you know, to invoke lawfare. Now, like, what's Christina Bobb doing right now at the RNC? She was, you know, brought on as an attorney. You know, but listen, conservatism is about self-reliance, right? So do we start to go, you know, and I've been saying this from day one, right? There's so much to go on now. We have this legal theory, and I'm not a constitutional attorney, but I do believe that you have two classes of citizens that are handled, that are accomplishing the same goal. They want to vote, but we have two separate but unequal processes, and it really puts the sovereign citizens at risk. The Texans, as Jane Nelson, the Secretary of State, calls them, who use a photo ID, and the quote unquote individuals who don't. So we have that in potential lawfare, right? 14th Amendment, Section 1, equal protectionism. Then we have the Delaware case, okay? The Delaware judge ruled. It's very simple. You look at the state constitution, and I know that people say, well, the state legislators, they write laws. A state law cannot be repugnant to the state constitution. I don't care what anybody says. And in Florida, it clearly delineates that the federal elections, or just elections, shall be held the first Tuesday after the first Monday of the month. Okay?
Election day, not election month.
So all of this nonsense with early voting and vote by mail is 45 days in advance. We have a ruling in Joe Biden's home state saying that, no, when you mail an early vote in, when you mail a ballot out, you're voting. The election started. It's not constitutional. You can't do that. So why isn't anyone using that as case law? And the third, and that's even before I get into the nitty gritty about the obfuscation of the reporting in Florida and how it's a law 98.09812A, and it basically the state is required.
That number again?
I'll do a slide on this on Monday. I want to get this out there too. There's just so much to get out. This is at the local level, and this basically connects the dots where I'll give it to you again. It's very simple. Let's just call it the 1 to 29 law. Okay? We're going to give it a nickname. 1 to 29 law. It's 98.0981 2A. And I just colloquialized it, call it 1 to 29. And what it says, when it comes time to reporting the election night results, that if there's a ballot group in any precinct, in any race, if the number of a ballot group is between 1 and 29, we don't have to report the detail. We have to give you the aggregate for that precinct and that race, which means you have these three groups or four groups. You have mail-in ballots, you have day of vote ballots, and you have early voting. You used to have provisional, but they took that off. So now there's three ballot groups. If any one of those ballot groups in any precinct, so a small precinct, right, 1,000 voters, is between 1 and 29, they only have to give you the aggregate number. And it's a way to hide the obscene number of vote-by-mail ballots that are coming in and how they're dominating. We know on a big level, it's easy to accept. Well, there was 42%, mail-in ballots, and there was only 28% day of and 13% whatever. But when you look and you see it itemized by line in a precinct where you know the people, and you're going to say there's no way that 800 people in my little precinct voted by mail because I saw 400 of them that day. So under the guise of, what's it called, Heligian logic, where, you debate back and forth, and there's always you cave for the good, like the Patriot Act, where you cave for security. What the position of these state lawmakers, and I've questioned many of them, they're saying, well, if you know the precinct and you know the ballot group and you know there's only 10 voters, you could look at the precinct, you could see how they voted, you could exclude the voters, and you can figure out how they vote. So they're trying to protect the few. Meanwhile, they're obfuscating the detail to the masses. We wrote a little program, and we took the 2020 results, and 40% of the total detail of the 2020 election, there is no detail. It's an aggregate number. And this is, again, so I was on a constitutional rant. This is basically, this law is repugnant to the reporting and the transparency that's stated in the Florida state constitution. They're full of crap. They're saying that, well, we care about the little guy, and if it's between 1 and 29, the ballot group in precinct 1573, that a bad actor could go in and figure out that, that the 82-year-old lady who never, watches Fox News, never leaves the house, we could figure out how she voted. But no, it's an excuse to obfuscate. It's an excuse for withholding transparency. And the biggest abuser, get this, in the 2020 race, it wasn't Joe Biden. It wasn't the Donald Trump race. It was the Brick Bradshaw race for sheriff. And you could connect the dots with that because, they say he's a great sheriff, but no, he was a tyrant when it came to school board meetings, when it came to COVID, when it came to masks. He arrested a 66-year-old lady in a bagel store for not wearing a mask. So this was all part of the hit. And so I want to start to connect the dots now to all this crazy data transactions that the Secretary of State in Texas is denying. Stephen Risher from Maricopa County. They're caught in lies. They're bastard to the wall. You have hundreds of thousands of these transactions, wherever they're coming from during COVID, while everything is shut down. How is that possible? It's cyber warfare, and it's all connecting the dots. It flows down to the state level, and you have these local state laws allowing people to register and request ballots by mail, to vote by mail without ID. And also, you have the obfuscation law, the 1 to 20 law, the 1 to 29 ballot group law, which basically covers up the crime that's starting at the top down with the federal government and all this nonsense with these hundreds of thousands of social security numbers and being flushed through the system. And I don't know if they're going to the actual local voting jurisdiction. Who knows? They might push these numbers right to the poll books for all we know.
Well, we can't. What we've really learned is that we can't trust anything coming out of the government, and we are catching them in bold-faced lies and misleading statements in order to continue to cover up the crimes from top to bottom. That's for sure.
Yep.
So I think that's a great little summary of what's going on here. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
I think I'm pretty much talked out by now.
Well, I really love today's show. I really do, because there was so much information here and you connected the dots just beautifully. And I really appreciate all the work that you've done and the people that are standing with you in that chat too, that, that have put so many hours into this. So thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to talking again Monday morning, because I really do think that this is one of those things that we've got to consistently chip away at, so that anything new that comes out, it's got to be out there. And the more we talk, the more we post this sort of thing, the more people are going to actually see the truth in very irrefutable numbers and proofs that are out there, so that they can't just say, well, we did everything right, like that clerk. Well, that's fine. If you're looking at like this much slice of what's going on out there, you might have done everything right by signing your name to something. But that doesn't mean that the whole election is correct. And we've got to look at it as a whole.
Listen, these people that are elected officials, these people that are hired to work our elections, and if they had the skill set to realize what's going on behind the scenes, number one, they wouldn't need to outsource to these consultants. And that's the problem, is they're outsourcing to these consultants, and they have the keys to the castle. And we don't know the nexus between the consultants, CISA, and this whole, web of tech people, right? Most of these tech guys, I call myself an oligarch, right? An oli, it's a sig, not a Glock, but I call myself an oligarch, not a tech oligarch. I'm on your guy's side, but most of the tech people they're bought and paid for. They're on the other side, and these people that work at the local level just have blind faith and trust, and they should not. And that is part of the problem. They don't have the skill set. If they did, they wouldn't be doing the jobs they're doing.
Well, they would start listening to what people are coming forward to them instead of defending their position. They would be listening and trying to act on it when things were brought before them. But right now, everybody's in a defensive mechanism. And what I told that clerk is, I said, she said, well, a third of the clerks in the state of Michigan have resigned. And I'm like, okay, I said, can we
Yeah.
get them together to talk? I said, people need to start singing like canaries and get in there and saying, this is what I saw that was wrong, instead of saving their own tails. Jumping in here and helping everybody do the heavy lifting of bringing everything until the last rock is unturned, bring everything to the light, so we've got a complete picture of this. If they're not helping, they're hiding something, in my opinion. And ignorance is not an excuse in any way, shape, or form. So they're kind of choosing the sides that they're going to be on, in my opinion. And
Well,
and even if they're doing it through feigned ignorance or actual ignorance, it's not okay.
yeah. All right. So I need to get on prepare for.
Yeah, I've got my next guests that are waiting here too. So
All right.
thank you so
Awesome.
much, Jeff. And
Thank
tell
you.
everybody how they can get a hold of you with your website and such, so that they can get a hold of you and support you.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. It's my full name at Jeff Buongiorno, which is 10 letters long and hard to spell. Just go to @vote. My website is votebongi, BONGI.com, and all my socials there. I'm basically just sticking to Twitter right now. Thanks.
Yeah, and you guys can go to any of my channels too, and I'll repost Jeff's stuff, because I think he's extraordinary. And thank you for all the work you've done.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You bet. Well, let's go to the next segment here. I'm going to take a real quick break, and we'll be right back with Karen and Ralph. And welcome to the second hour of Brandenburg News Network. It is April 4th, 2024, and welcome on the show today, Karen and Ralph. We got a lot to talk about.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What's happening in Ralph and Karen world?
Well, I was just listening to Jeff, and there is so much wrong with our election systems all over the country, from local to national. And it's easy to listen to somebody like him who's examining all of these issues in detail and get bogged down in it and go, this is just hopeless, where there's nothing we can do, and we might as well just let go, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I know there are people out there who are giving up, but there are also some victories happening. And so I wanted to point at that, because I had to catch up a little bit this morning, because I was offline yesterday, and it was great to just take a day away from Telegram for a day. And one of the first things I saw and shared today was that Wisconsin had a vote along with their primary that they defunded, I call it a defunding, the private funds from their elections. This is the amendment they made, and it prevents somebody like Mark Zuckerberg from spending money in their elections. They learned that he had funded a lot of things in their state that made a difference in some way, and they didn't find that that was appropriate, and they took an action. And I think every time we have a victory like that, whether it's a local or a state or a national level, we should be pointing that out too, because it is a sign that people are learning and they are willing to take action, and it should be highlighted as some form of victory.
Absolutely.
We got to be able to expose things in order to address them.
That's great news.
There's another one too. Tarrant County, Texas is ordering sequential pre-numbered ballots for their election. So there's another one where, okay, one county is saying we're going to prevent some unlawful activity in our election process, and here's one way we can do it. So there's a second one that just came out today. And they're happening everywhere, but they sometimes don't get as much attention as the negative points. So I think it's a good thing to point those out sometimes.
Absolutely, and really go down and look at into the restructuring or what we need to do to actually take the nation back. You can't just tear it down without having a plan. And so I keep telling everybody, run for something, run for anything. If you're just an honest person, you don't have to know everything. You'll learn along the way, and there will be people that will help you too. But you have to have the guts to do it and the determination to stay with it, because it's a little bit of a brutal arena to jump into. But if you like to fight a little bit and fight for things that are right and for the future of your family, it's a great term of service. So what's on your mind today, guys? I want to go through the chat a little bit, because Rob's been posting, Beast posting, and so is Charlotte this morning. But we can get to that in a minute, or we can move forward. What do you want to do?
Well, there's another thing I was thinking about as I was listening to Jeff, and something else I think people don't really consider too much when they're talking about using computers to tabulate stuff like this is computers are not infallible. Even if the software is written absolutely perfectly, they're not infallible. As an example, okay, this is going to get kind of a little bit technical, but computers are susceptible to cosmic ray bit flips, where information in memory can be corrupted by a cosmic ray flying through the atmosphere, flying through the building that you're in, and hitting the memory in your computer. And you see this, you see people talk about how rare this is on Earth, and that it's real common to have to deal with this kind of thing in satellites and other spacecraft, because you don't have the Van Allen belts of the Earth that redirect some of the cosmic rays, but and you also don't have the atmosphere. But here on Earth's surface, you see people talking about, oh, that doesn't happen that much here on Earth's surface, on Earth's surface. But when you get into building servers have a type of RAM called error-corrected RAM, ECC RAM, and what that does is it actually watches for bit flips and can fix them. It has like a special correction math in there and stores a little bit of extra information about everything that's stored on the server so that it can correct that if it. Well, when I built my last computer, I decided I wanted to have error-corrected RAM in it, and it was a pain in the neck to build that computer as a desktop system rather than a server system. The nice thing is that it allows me to log those events so I can see when they happen and when the RAM is corrected and error. And it happens not infrequently. I'm going to take a guess and say I probably see at least 3 to 4 bit flips per month on that. So when people say that it's rare, anywhere near sea level instead of out in space, it's not as rare as you might think. And every one of those bit flips is something in memory that could potentially have gotten corrupted if I didn't have error-corrected RAM.
How unusual is it for people to have that error-corrected RAM on their computers? And it says, because we've talked a lot about people protecting their data and protecting themselves online and what you can do personally to do. How uncommon is that?
Oh, pretty much nobody runs with error-corrected RAM on a home computer, unless you've got. I'm going to back that up a little bit in that if you've got a really, really modern computer with DDR5 RAM, DDR5 RAM, they finally decided that was enough of a problem that they integrated it into the spec. So anything that has DDR5 RAM has error-corrected RAM. It's not as good as server error-corrected RAM. It's not quite as complete of error correction, but it's a step in the right direction.
Could it help against any other kinds of electronic or otherwise attacks?
Potentially, but like it could probably help to a certain extent, I would think, against like Spectre and Rowhammer attacks. Really more of like the Rowhammer attacks, but it's probably not going to help a ton against like an EMP or a coronal mass ejection. It's more about protecting against cosmic rays than anything. And like I said, it's been found to be common enough that they actually integrated that into the spec so that all new RAM now is going to have that in it. But if you don't have DDR5 in your computer, I can almost guarantee you that you don't have error-corrected RAM. It was very much a servers-only thing until very recently. Or if you built your computer very, very specifically to use server RAM.
Well, that's a good thing to take into consideration. I mean, we all need to be aware of the changing climate in the cyber world because it's quick. Things change so fast. It's hard to keep up. It's really hard to keep up with them unless it's your full-time devoted to it. So thank you for sharing that today, Ralph.
Yeah, so you think about like the electronic voting machines and the tabulators and all of that kind of stuff.
It's a sieve.
Yep, and how much of that stuff could get bit flips just from cosmic rays and have nobody even know.
Well, and the people that are working in the elections, they're not. They really are not. They're everyday Americans, most of them, right? So there's very few that are going to have that expertise behind it. So to all you serious techies out there, we need you to jump into this game a little bit and fight for the transparency and talking about the deficiencies in the weaknesses in the system and where they are, so that people can have more eyes on it and such, and also fight for those actions to be corrected. I think that's really important. I'm going to go to the chat here a minute. And Charlotte, SSA and HAVA or HAVA is where Michigan has theirs. I think we have worried Michigan. I hit them up on sanctuary cities, and people are really correcting them. A statement came out that Lansing is declared, but that others have not fully committed. Yeah, Lansing's a sanctuary city now. You know what? I got ideas on that. I'm going to put my ideas out on this when I finish this one. I've got 4 screens going right now. So I have noticed a few very good corrections and know that we the people are taking control. Keep going on those meeting, Michiganders, and calling local gov. Yeah, there's a shot to you, Karen. There you go. She said it. So Charlotte's the queen right now. I think I have Slotkins on Wednesday. Michigan media bashing Trump over death statement of Michigan woman, Nestle bashing white supremacy groups, and Stabenow wishing happy Arab months in the news update today. Oh my gosh. Turn the media off. All right. It's all you are is like drinking from, it's not a fire hose. It's a sewage. It's a dump that is literally feeding sewage into every single person's psyche by watching these ridiculous mainstream media, and without thinking, just not questioning it. We don't need to be questioning everything. So I have another way to look at the sanctuary cities. Okay. So if they have a sanctuary city, provided that we all agree that God is in control and God is good all the time, right? Maybe it's a setup for the biggest sting in the history of the world. So think about this. What if they have a sanctuary cities and people that are commies and liars, cheats, and thieves are congregating there? What a great place to pen them in and lock them up. I'm okay with sanctuary cities. At least we've got them aggregated in one spot for ease of finding them and cleaning the coop out there, because it's all, this is like a chicken coop. Let's put them in the chicken coop so we can go in there and shovel one area out instead of random areas across the state. That's what I would rather have. Let them set up their sanctuary cities. That's great. Then when they can all go there and we can pick them all up.
Now, I like watching the news sometimes. I watch the evening news, the local. I typically watch an ABC, but I get a kick out of it. And lately I've been reporting as I'm watching what they're saying, because it tells me a lot. Like, when Trump went to Grand Rapids, they act like they're all non-biased, and they're showing that there are people who are not supporters of Trump. They didn't say opposition. The people who are not supporters of Trump and the people who are there to support Trump. And then they have, they call everything that Trump says rhetoric. This is a term used for a negative connotation. It's not that he had a speech or that he made such and such comments. He had rhetoric. And if you can catch those subtleties and point them out, they lose power. So I've been catching all of those things, when they say Trump this and that, and they don't call him former president, or they repeatedly call him
the United States. They were going to stick with that term right there, right down to Brandenburg, because that's who he is.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. They've been calling him lately. I noticed they call him former president, and they put a stress on former president. Why are they doing that? Because they don't want people to think of him as president. Former President Trump was in Grand Rapids and spewing rhetoric that made he's against all immigrants. No, that's not what he said. He's never said that.
Never.
But that is if you can hear it, if you can watch with careful eyes and ears, then you can learn what they're trying to put out in their narratives, and you can react accordingly.
Well, let's just take all these terms back, okay? I'm all about trans. Let's be transparent. Okay, that came from Ivan Raikland. I love that man. He's amazing. Beast love.
He's great with wordplay.
Awesome. Great work that Ivan does. So yes, we're all about trans. We want to be transparent. And did you see the study that came out that most kids grow out of their need by the time they're 15 years old? So these parents that are mutilating their children, if they waited, and I've heard heartbreaking stories of people that basically had surgeries that they can never recover from. And they're like, I wish I would have waited. Like, my life feels like it's over. That's what people say. So how about we just be transparent on it? Reparations. Let's talk reparations. I'm all about reparations. I think we should do reparations. And you know what kind of reparations I would do? Let's claw back every dollar of ill-gotten gain from these politicians, remove their citizenship because they're treasonous bastards, and take all of their assets, which they have gotten illegally, unlawfully, and traitorously, throw them on the table and take it and divide it against what? Actual Americans, actual citizens, and use that to fund some different efforts. Like, I don't know, maybe Deportation Day, National Deportation Day, and or national. Let's refund all the money on unlawful taxation and all of this kind of nonsense that they money laundered away, and give it back to the American people. I'm kind of a fan of that. So there you go. There's the Brandenburg plan for reparations right there. Claw back from all of them. Oh, maybe all the corporations and such that have overstepped, usurped what they should have been doing. How about Nestle, who has, with $250 permit, has pulled millions and millions and millions of gallons of water out of the state of Michigan. I think we should have reparations from Nestle. How about we do that? We should go ahead and go after Nestle and have reparations, claw back that money and give it out to the people that have been stolen from, their assets been stolen from. I'm all about that. What do you say, guys?
Sounds like a plan.
I think it's a great idea. Yes, and you know what? And it's like, quite honestly, I think we should talk about these. Let's claw these terms back. I think this is important. Go ahead and use the terms that they're using. Use them right in their face. Only help them understand the definition of what they've done. I was talking to somebody yesterday about the private membership associations. I think we should be running with this full on. And she was saying, I don't really understand how it works. And I'm like, well, this is pretty easy, because this is what the Clinton Foundation had done to hide what they were doing. They had private foundations, but they structured it, like Terramar and such, as private membership associations and such. So it gets them out of the purview of the law. just like Terramar, when they went to prosecute some of these people that were involved in Terramar, what they had done, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I thought it was fascinating. They, the Maxwells and such, Ghislaine Maxwell was all involved. They went ahead and they claimed the ocean as a sovereign nation, really, and they called it Terramar. So anytime somebody wanted to be prosecuted, they would say, well, we're a citizen of Terramar.
Well, then you're not a citizen here. You have no rights.
Well, let's talk about that with all of these people that claim dual citizenship with other country, specifically Israel, that are in positions of power in our government. How in the world are they? Can they say that? Or what is it? Ilhan Omar, the traitor up there, and say she's a Somali first person, and on and on. All right, get the hell out of the United States, babe, because you know what? You're either an American or you're not. And that's just the way it is. When you come to America, it's to be a nation, one nation under God, not one nation having our nation sold off by pieces to the disastrous nation that you came from, that you didn't have the guts to stay and fight there. So she comes here in order to move funds to those other nations. They should be run out of town on a rail, every one of them, for the traitors they are. And people need to be using not the soft words. Okay, we're going to sit here and we're going to talk with our soft words. No, call them out for what they are. They're traitors, and they should be run out on a rail, all of them.
I think I mentioned before that in the movie Oh Brother Where Art Thou, they actually run a politician out on a rail. And I had never seen or really considered what that would look like. That where that phrase came from, I don't know. But they put them on a great big wooden post, set them on it, and a whole bunch of guys came in with this post, set them on it, and then ran out the back doors of the township hall or whatever that building was. And it was fantastic. It was like a public tar and feather.
Well,
but not as painful. It's just embarrassing.
They've stolen. I want everybody to understand the correct terms here. They have stolen from America. We are America. They have stolen from the people of America. They've stolen our assets by allowing China to buy farmland and such, and developers developing farmland. And they're like a stray dog. It's going to come and crap in your yard. You're going to have to clean up after it. They're going to leave you the mess to pay for the infrastructure it's going to require. What's the benefit to the citizens of America? Zero, nada, nothing. And then they go on and they're a parasite. They eat another piece of property up. This should absolutely be called out, because they're disabling us from having the amount of land, the land in these local cities, and they basically have turned them into 10 to 15-minute cities. All you got to do is look at Kentwood next door to where I am. Kentwood is affectionately known as Rentwood, because that used to be a really nice area, and the people in government turned it into a disaster. The city is a disaster when you look at what they've done through mismanagement, absolutely no forethought whatsoever. And if they can plug houses or apartments into every square inch of that city, they're going to do it, and it's a shame. So now you got people in these 15-minute alleged cities. What does that mean? That means that they're completely and totally dependent on the government instead of having the ability to maybe raise foods and such. They outlaw chickens. They outlaw being able to have anything that looks like or that helps them provide. They're trying to outlaw gardens in areas right now. You can't have a garden because, well, this is what the commies say. You're taking the water of the state to take care of yourself. But in the same breath, they go ahead and they give it to the corporations like Nestle.
Yep.
So that all you and the people are is just a cog in the wheel of these corporations. I think we should claw back here. I would love to see us go after every single asset of Gretchen Whitmer, the traitor, claw it back and say, you're done. Give it back to the people of Michigan.
Well, did you see the Harvard University endowment buying up both water rights and vineyards in California?
I didn't see that one, but I know that there's two people that basically own all of the water rights in California right now. I do know that.
Yeah, the water right now is that is a big battleground.
It's going to be worse too.
Yep,
As we
if
go
people don't
forward.
wake
That's
up
what
on it.
they're trying. When you look at anything that's a natural resource, that's what they're really going after. And so we have to be really mindful on that. I had a discussion with a guy this week about the nonsense and what they've done with fishing license and hunting license and such, and why they choked some of that down. And a real telltale situation that you can look at in the state of Michigan was, okay, this is how these morons in office think, which to me is just like, I can't even put this into words. Okay, all they are is snake oil salesmen. That's it. That's all we got in office. Because if any of them wanted to do something, they would have, and they haven't. So this is perfect idiocy, perfect political idiocy. So we had a problem with moose in the UP. Oh no, we have problems with moose. So the environmental Nazis decide, well, we're gonna do it the natural way. We're gonna throw wolves in and let the wolves take care of the moose. Okay, let's see where this is gonna go. So now we've got a wolf problem. Who would have thought? And so the wolves got in there and started to kill off the moose. And so now we have a wolf problem. And so then what they decided to do was hire a bunch of game wardens, or whatever you want to call it, to go out there and shoot the wolves. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but let's think this through just a little bit. What if, just as a thought here, and that would have cut like the payroll right off the bat. What if they would have said, okay, hunters and sportsmen out there, we need to have some moose thinned out of the herd here, because it's kind of getting out of hand. And they said, okay, guys, go out there and hunt away. Let's take some of the population down here. And I don't even know if that's the right answer, because I haven't looked at the studies, and anything coming out of their mouths is a lie. So we need to go to like actual sportsmen to find out what's really happening on the ground, because they actually want to conserve it. They don't want to destroy it. They want to conserve and protect it, right? So why don't you guys go and create food and for your families and your friends, and take some of the herd out and open this up? Why is it that they're not doing this? Why is it that they're not doing enough? Instead of throttling it back to the licensure, why are they not doing something to promote some of these things so that there's more food that people can actually pull from the state?
Well, I want to back this up a little bit here too, in that who determined the proper number of moose?
Exactly.
To figure out how many moose there should be, to figure out we have too many moose.
Exactly. And I want to even know where to get the data, because they're a bunch of lying bastards, right?
Well, even if they have the data, who's to say that there are too many moose?
Yeah, well, who made that decision? God.
Yeah, right? Who made that decision? How do we know that that isn't the proper number of moose and it's been too low?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, who died made them God. That's all I got to say on that. And so I mean, the whole thing is backwards. Instead of serving that, well, and I can tell you who did it. It's the insurance agent. It's the insurance industry that did it. Because, oh no, car crashes. We got to get the numbers down, because then we don't have to pay out for car crashes. That's what's driving all of this, right?
Have you ever looked at the data that they collected on the number of the decline of flying insects and how
from nicotinoids?
Well, not. They didn't go into a conclusion, but they figured that the number of songbirds is way down from what it used to be, because they figured that the number of insects, flying insects, is way down from what it used to be. And the way that they figured that out is by they started, I think it was back in the 50s or 60s, they started counting the number of bug splats on windshields per certain amount of distance or something like that, and compared it with the number of bug splats on modern cars. And it's I'm thinking it was somewhere between 10 and 25% of what it used to be. So the number of flying insects has gone down dramatically. As a result, the number of songbirds has gone down dramatically. But you
Well,
sure
maybe
don't
they're
hear
just
about them trying to boost the number of flying insects like mosquitoes and flies and stuff, do you?
maybe
Yeah,
the insects just learn to avoid the roadways.
Yes.
You
that,
have to look at all the angles, Ralph.
that's called like natural selection. We're just taking out the stupid bugs. That's what it is there, you know.
Maybe
But
they just evolved to not fly.
yeah, that's what they are. We've got like kiwi bugs running around on the ground now.
Did you hear that there was a wolf shot in the Lower Peninsula recently? I think it was January. Somebody thought it was a coyote, shot it, put something about it on social media, and it ended up cause I don't know if they got in trouble or not, but it turned out to actually be a wolf.
I go out because I'm on horses out in the woods a lot, and I've ridden in different places. I've actually seen some version of, and I don't know if they're Kai wolves or if they're actually maned wolves, because I've seen them a couple of times. And they're real elusive. And usually you can smell them before you see them when you're out in the woods. I think that people that are out in the woods a lot, they've got a heightened sense of awareness around them, and you can smell them like a quarter to a half mile away, depending on the season, whether they're in season or out of season. But those things are some really freaky looking things. I'm going to tell you what they've got, because wolf has longer legs than coyotes. I'll usually come up on a den of coyotes at least once a year. That's what I'll see. But the Kai wolves and the which is a half breed between either a wolf and a coyote, or sometimes you'll have like a fox and a coyote or something, because they do breed together. So you'll see something that doesn't look quite right, and you don't really always know what it is. But a maned wolf is really tall, and they've got much more of a reddish or an auburn color than anything out there. And I've seen them right here around the Grand Rapids area, the maned wolves, and they're supposed to not be here.
Isn't that a Mexican species?
Well, I think
I
they're in
think it's
Canada.
foreign.
They're definitely in Canada. So they're when you look at the range, the Canadian range is part of it. Well, they'll go up by
Oh,
across the lakes. So, but they're here, and just like I've got an old friend, and he grew up on the. I won't tell you exactly a story because it's really funny, but that's one that you want to be prepared for what he went through as a little kid, because his mom and dad had a 5-acre ranch right on. They had multiple ranches, but they had a 5-acre ranch right on the border of Mexico. And he said, yeah, he said it changes your whole perspective when all of a sudden you've got somebody that crossed the border illegally with a knife to your neck when you're about 12 years old. And he said it changes your perspective on what you're allowed to get through real quick as a 12-year-old. His stories are hilarious. But anyhow, they had horses over by Port Huron, and his neighbor had a horse that had claw marks on its back, and he said,
wow.
nothing you cannot mistake that. He said that's a cougar. And he said we have them here in Michigan. You'll see that there's a lot of times they're really elusive, so the DNR is not going to admit to what they've dropped in this state, because they have. Any of us that are out there can see through their bullshit, because it's what it is, that they've dropped things here without necessarily acknowledging it, sort of like the lack of acknowledging the SR-72 that's out there, which is really interesting, really really interesting. So because I like aircraft, and kind of scrubbed it, but not entirely. You can find things on that, but they won't acknowledge what they're actually doing, which really makes it fun.
Yeah, SR-72 is pretty interesting.
Really
The
interesting.
prospect of a combined cycle engine looks pretty neat.
Yeah, we got all kinds of technology out there that they kind of sort of hint to, but it's like if you go to the movie Maverick and you zoom in on the plane that's in the hangar, and you change see the contrast change, you can see they were given a nod on that right there, and it said SR-72. So it's there. They've got more than that, guaranteed. They've got more than that, and yeah, that's kind of an interesting area to go down into and actually cut past their nonsense, because you can do it if you're a little bit persistent on things.
Yep.
There was something.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm about to change the subject a little bit, so if you had something to add to that, go ahead, Ralph.
Oh, just on the subject of animals, I didn't realize until just a few years ago that we have jellyfish in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was pretty neat, and there's sightings of those things all over the place. I've never seen one before, but it's the one species of freshwater jellyfish, and we have them here in Michigan.
I think this is really interesting how they've changed things so that we don't have access. People don't have access, and then they like brainwash people into not looking at them. It's just like rennet for making cheese. The rennet, you can make rennet out of, there's 3 other plants that you can make rennet out of without having to go to an animal protein. So there are all of these things, but if there's so few people that know how to dress out an animal and have it ready for production of anything. And people are really scared of that sort of thing. So I field dressed a deer. Though I don't eat meat now, and the reason why I don't eat meat is for health reasons. And I'm going to go down that path with everybody at some point in time, because I think people would probably find it interesting. I don't use health issues in order to manipulate people's emotions. It's like stick to the facts. And it has to be good for everyone. You don't use emotions in order to steer people or brainwash them. And I'm fundamentally opposed to that, which is why I never really talked about anything. But they want to keep things out of our hands so that we're afraid and have to go back to them to be the source on everything. Okay. So there's other ways to do that. And I did forage for food for quite a few years. There's more nutrition in the food that we can forage for than the commercial crops that we have. So here's a gimme to everybody out there. This is a chip shot and a real easy one for everybody to look up. That would be purslane. Okay. For gardeners, purslane is the bane of our existence. And I'll tell you why. It grows everywhere. There's tons of it. You really can't get rid of it. If you pull it up and you throw it off to the side, it's going to throw the roots down and it's going to grow where you throw it. And but it's kind of a cool. Let me look it up for you to show you, because this is real interesting. And I had somebody tell me. Well, I was talking to a real good friend of mine. His name is Beer at the Parade. He's one of the people in We the Media. I'm very good friends with him. And I was telling him all the stuff that I just happen to know about food preservation and about because I can pretty much preserve anything, and how to forage for things and look for food and nutrients, medicines, all that sort of thing. It's really, really quite easy to do. And he's like, you should really teach classes on this. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm on Brandenburg News Network and I can't do everything. Hang on a minute.
I want to try a pawpaw one of these days.
I've got that figured out too. I'm gonna go buy those suckers, because I've got to figure out where to buy them. And there's lots of different. Oh, you can buy seeds for purslane. Who in their right mind would buy seeds for purslane? I'm sorry. Okay, this is like it's everywhere. Okay, but okay. So you know what's going to happen today, don't you? I'm going to have to buy some seeds for purslane, because now I'm curious. So, not that I don't know where to find it, but I am going to. Absolutely. So it's got a little leaf and it looks like a little tiny jade leaf. So I'll bring up this screen right now. It's kind of because I have to, you know.
You're reminding me. I had a 500 level botany course in college that I had to take for my minor, and I hated everything about it because I'm an animal person. Animal behavior, like my husband and he signed us up for the animal behavior observance study for the eclipse. We might go to the zoo for it, which would be really interesting. But animal behavior, I know. Botany, no. On the first day, and all we did in that class, we had 2 exams, and I got an A-, by the way, because I worked my butt off for it. But all we did was go into various environments, and he would point out various plants, and we would collect some and preserve it in the drying room so that we could study it. And he pointed out something really, really simple, like a violet or something. I had no idea what it was, and he called on me first.
Oh,
And he
no.
looked at me, and everybody looked at me like, "What is wrong with you?"
How do you not know what a violet is? I've got to say this.
Well, it was like, not like a, and it probably wasn't a violet, but I'm saying it was, to them, without a flower, it looked very obvious because they were familiar with it, and I wasn't, whatever it was, until later on. And so when I passed, there was 2 exams. I got a C on the first one. On the second one, I studied. I skipped other classes so I could study for it. I got an A- in the course. And he saw me in the hallway, and he's like, "Karen." Like he was completely shocked that I had passed.
That's funny.
Like, yeah, I had to learn the hard way. So it's still hard for me, but I could still remember some names of plants and the things that we learned in that course because I had to have them hammered down so much.
Okay, so I'm going to go down here and I'm going to look at some of these things, and I will tell you what's not purslane and what is purslane. So purslane grows out. It looks like it starts from a central point and it kind of just like grows out from there. And so what you want to look for is this configuration of leaves right there. And it grows real close to the ground. It crawls away. It's like a mallow. They've got, when I looked this up online here and did the search on DuckDuckGo, they've got a mix. And so that's not the purslane that you necessarily want to eat right there. You want something that looks like this. It's got kind of like a thickish, here's a real good picture of it. It's got kind of a thickish, compared to the leaves, a red type of a vine structure. And it's a weed, but it was brought over here as an agricultural crop. And then once they got into the hybridized crops and the big ag crops, excuse me, then they abandoned these because it just takes longer to harvest. But with that said, it is so nutrient dense. It's more nutrient dense than spinach. So this would be one, if you're going to start really looking into things, and I'm not going to say just go eat whatever you find on the ground. And don't blame me if you pick up the wrong plant, because I'm not there to point to you the exact plant. That, don't go out there and go, it's a dandelion. That's got to be close enough to purslane. Let's just try this a minute, which, well, you can eat dandelions too. But you know what I mean? That's the point, is that take a little time and find out exactly what it looks like. Maybe what I should do is do nature walks with the camera and show people what they're actually looking for. Like lamb's quarters, another one. It grows everywhere. And mallows grow everywhere in Michigan. You can and those are easy to find. And through the season, there's always something that you can literally walk out your door, find, and eat. It's really amazing.
Speaking of dandelions, you can make rubber out of those.
Yeah,
because they're so full of natural latex that they're very rich in that, and you can actually make rubber out of that. That's
the white substance on the inside of dandelions.
Yep.
So that's a latex base. And there's another thing I had to think about in a minute, because I just bought this. It's asafoetida, and it's from fennel or fenugreek. I got to think a minute. And it has the ability to lower blood pressure, as well as it's from the carrot family. And you know what? I can go grab a package of this in a minute. It's really interesting. But all of these things are really, really easy if you put a little time into it. So this is another part of not only growing your own food, but knowing where to look to find it. You can have high concentrations of vitamin C in spruce tree needles. And you can throw that in a cup and make tea out of it. And you'll be able to get your vitamin C right there from spruce trees. Hang on a minute. I'm going to grab it's got a weird spelling and such. Asafoetida, I think, is what it's called. And so let me grab that a minute. You may talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to grab it off the counter here a minute.
Just make sure that if you're collecting for food, what you collect is from a safe area, or it's not got fertilizers and pesticides and so on it. I collected some pine needles that from a tree that's actually on the other side of my neighbor's our fence. It's on the neighbor's side of the property. And I found out later that he had sprayed some trees over there for the gypsy moth. And I don't know that he sprayed the tree I got the needles from, or if they would have been toxic, and I rinsed them at least before making a tea out of them. But it was like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. I went
Well,
to
and
the trees on
also-
our property after that.
So this is the new stuff I just got in, and I'm going to start experimenting with this because I've done this for many years. I experiment with all kinds of things, and I will tell you, because of my health history, I literally turned my body into a human experiment because I want to know how things are going to work, whether it works or it doesn't. So here's my asafoetida, organic asafoetida powder, and I've got 2 different types coming right now, and it's kind of a resin, but it's an overseas type product. I don't believe that we're making it here right now, though we should be making it here, as well as a lot of the other cottage industries that we should be having to put these corporate marauders out of business right now. But I have a picture of some of the benefits. Let me post on my Telegram channel a minute. Well, you talk amongst yourselves a minute, and I'm just going to keep
By
going.
the way, I went back to that show from last May in which you were talking about microgreens and part of it. And I like the show so much because so much of it is so relevant even today. Like it would sound like a show we would do this week. But I shared that with the summary I originally wrote again a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And so I got a library book on sprouts and microgreens. And great book. It was really simple. I read through the whole thing while sitting on the couch near my husband watching TV one day, and I kept telling him what I was finding. Very simple, lots of pictures, and so it was really easy to read. But that's what I liked about it, was that it was easy to learn about sprouts and microgreens. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't overwhelming. Our next step is I want to try some different types of sprouts or microgreens that are available locally in whatever stores, so that I can kind of experiment and find out what I would like to eat. And then I want to get some seeds and get started with, I might use trays like you have, and I might get some of those. I want to find out what I want to raise first, so I know what kind of trays I want. But really excited to. What's that?
Well, and look at the nutrient count, not even just what you like, but the nutrition. Because if you're going into a time of crisis, which I believe we are, you want to look at the nutrition count, not necessarily what you like, but what you need. And so, like, if you're sprouting, say, beets, and beets are easy to sprout, and so is alfalfa is easy to sprout, broccoli is easy to sprout. So let's just say by volume, the seeds, you want to get big, fat, wonderful, nutrient-rich seeds, so that you've got all the nutrient in the seeds, so you don't have to augment with like a fertilizer or something, which I can do because I've got compost from the animals, right? But if you don't have that and you're in an apartment, you literally can raise as much food in an apartment or where you are, as long as you have a water source and you prepared ahead of time for any of your needs, no matter what. And so you think about the nutrition. So beets have some really unusual properties that other foods don't have. And so you can kind of sort of piece it together so that you're not on a starvation ration, which you can live on, say, like beans and rice. It's a complete protein. Quinoa is a complete protein and such. But all of those other plant enzymes and such that you would get out of plants that are so important to our diets to live. You think about, not like, okay, like a really immature person will say, well, I'm going to stock up on ice cream or something like that, because I like it. Well, it's like, no, you got to think about your body functioning and how do you stay the strongest, the longest, and what do you need to do that? Yeah. So here's that chart on asafoetida, and it got the ability for asthma relief, lowers blood pressure, help for IBS, blood sugar control, FOD maps, diet friendly, and reduces flatulence. Now, that's a pretty quick screenshot of it, but there's other properties of this, and it's sort of a resin. Let me quick look this up so I'm not misspeaking, because that's what happens. My hard drive is halfway full most of the time. But
well, I think too, another thing people need to be mindful of when they're doing preparation like that is look into the long-term stability of different things before you try and just, stock up on stuff and store it forever. Make sure you're storing it properly. Like, for example, one of the best resources that I've ever found for that is looking into what both the Mormons and the Seventh-day Adventists recommend for storage procedures for various things. Like white rice you can keep for a very, very long time. Brown rice goes bad quicker, even if you store it perfectly. So there's a lot of things that are like that research it properly. If you're going to store sugar long term, don't use an oxygen absorber in it because it turns it into a brick over time. There's all kinds of stuff though that's people have researched this. People have researched food storage for a long time. Leverage that work. Learn from what other people have figured out over decades, or for some foods several centuries at least of food storage experience.
Okay, that's what I was doing yesterday, was researching. We want to raise some more meat again this year, and I was thinking, if, let's say, we lose power and we lose fuel, so we can't even run a generator, if it happens for a length of time, I would really be upset at losing a lot of meat that we think is good because it's frozen. What if it's not frozen anymore and now it's going to all go bad and that's all your meat source? So I would like to do something different with some of that. Well, how this has to be planned ahead for. So I was researching canning meat. Never done it before. My husband's like, that's a lot of work. I don't think you want to do that. And I'm like, doesn't matter what I want to do.
The easiest thing to can on the planet. Seriously.
It did when I read about it. It's like, I think the thing is, it's time consuming because of the butchering process. And in our case, in the last few years, we tend to raise 24 birds at a time. And when we slaughter and butcher ourselves, it takes a lot of time. And sometimes it can be backbreaking to go through that process. So to go further and do things like cubing it, you can't just parcel it out or freeze a whole bird. That takes a lot less work. But to have to minimize the fat content and take the skin off and cube it and then do canning, that's a whole other step that takes time. And if you've got a lot of birds, how are you going to do that? We might have to butcher less at a time and do it over a number of days. So it just means more planning.
Like chicken, just throw the chicken right into the jars with the bones in it and everything. I've done it.
Right. We've read about that too.
Yeah. We need to get together and I'll show you how to can
this
stuff, because it's really kind of once you learn the basics of it, you can anything and everything. It's amazing. I'm going to read this. Let me quickly, I'm going to copy this source because this is from Healthline. And I think this is really significant, and I'll tell you why. I just posted that little poster on my Telegram channel, and I'm going to throw a source in here in a minute. So if you go to @Brandenburg 4MI, you will find my one source. There's lots of sources out there. Yeah, fat fingers. I just liked my own post. Didn't mean to do that. Let me see if I can make this thing work a minute while I'm online. And I want to read some of this to you. And I was praying. This is so funny. You know how God is hilarious. He really is. He's funny. I got up this morning and I said, I feel like I need to make a change in the way I'm doing things here on Brandenburg News Network a little bit. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? Right? I don't care what it is. Just tell me what you want to do, and I'm your girl. And so, friend got online, and we were talking this morning, and I said, we both are researchers, and I'm like, you know what? We got to give people something to research or do because they want to be a part of this. And this is what she brought up too. She says everybody wants to be a part of this, but they don't know what to do. So I almost think that we need to do something that's kind of like what I would do as a person who will research a topic and throw it out there and say, okay, everybody research this topic. And then we're gonna come together with all of this stuff and put it out there so people know, so that you can be part of Donna Brandenburg's little research team here that I'm going to get moving forward on, besides the fact that I'm still working on those things to remove the machines at the township level. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop that. But what I'm saying is that I think I need to be a little bit more resource oriented, because that's my happy spot right there. I love doing this kind of stuff, and I like looking it up on the fly. So I'm going to read this article on asafoetida, and it is from the dried sap or gum resin obtained from the roots of the ferula plants. So that's a sister to, say, carrot, celery. Okay, that type of, in that food group. Commonly dried, ground into coarse yellow powder, and used for either culinary or medicinal purposes. So it's a common spice with Indian food. Okay, so it's a food. It's not a synthesized medicine. Okay, think about that. And we can heal our bodies. God gives us everything we need just by understanding where he put it and how to use it. And it's always in the dosage. It's never in what you're looking at. It's always in the dosage. Because, like, I'm going to throw this out there, and dear God, please don't anybody, I'm not even going to tell you what it is. There is a plant, a common plant out there, which is listed as poisonous. It is not poisonous, and it actually can help heal in many, many different directions, but you got to know how to take it and under which conditions, and it can turn around, say, multiple symptoms of a sickness very, very quickly. So anyhow,
I would say there's multiple plants like that.
There are multiple plants like that, and there's multiple substances like that. So if I throw things out there, I'm going to have the black men, showing up, or the men in black showing up at my door from the medical mafia here. Oh, Brandenburg, what you doing? So we're going to go to foods for right now, and then maybe at some point in time, I'll teach some advanced natural medicinal techniques, because it all works.
And you mentioned that this was used in Indian food as a spice.
Yeah.
Something that I learned recently is that turmeric, I just recently learned how frequently turmeric is adulterated with lead compounds. There is a ton of that goes on because there's two different lead compounds that can kind of mimic the natural color of turmeric. And so there's a whole industry behind taking like low quality turmeric, shipping it off to polishers, which add a whole bunch of lead to it, basically send it off to wholesalers that then like package it up and sell it. So that's one too that, it's got a lot of benefits to turmeric and curcumin, but you got to be real careful that it's not adulterated.
Well, and there you go. There we go back to needing to go local and grow your own food, or know who's growing it. I just found a local source for einhorn wheat, which is an old, I decided to take some farm tours, and because I'm getting myself some sheep. Okay, that's what I want to do. My goal is to get some sheep, and by virtue of the fact that I'm looking around for sheep, and I'm going to different farms and such, because that's what I do, found a local source for einhorn wheat, it's an old grain. It has gluten in it, but it's a digestible type of protein. So I'm kind of excited about that. So I'm going to go down, and it's so asafoetida is known for its strong pungent odor, which sometimes it's called stinking gum or something like that. And what I know is it's a combination smell, whatever, or spice of, say, garlic, onions, and garlic, onions, and a few other things. So it's known as like a stinky gum or something. In Aviatic, I can't say it this morning. Hing, it's also called hing, is used to aid digestion and gas, as well as bronchitis and kidney stones. Okay, kidney stones. There's another way to get rid of kidney stones, and I can even give you the recipe for that because I learned that from a person who was a medicine, a Native American medicine woman years and years ago, and it works. If you can pass it, this other thing will pass it. I'll give you the recipe for that in a minute. So traditional uses of this are pretty far-reaching, right? So it's a food. So it's high in the compound. Let me read the exact words of this article. The compounds help protect your cells against potential damage caused by unstable molecules called free radicals. As a result, antioxidant properties may also protect against chronic inflammation, heart disease, cancer, and type 2 diabetes. Okay, this is kind of an interesting little compound here. And it also contains high amounts of phenolic compounds such as tannins and flavonoids, which are known for potential antioxidants. And test tube animal studies have found that it exhibits anti-inflammatory, antioxidant activity, and so we need to research this. But there's so many things that can be proved out naturally by this and other compounds that we really have to look at this. And so let's just say, well, we're looking around the state of Michigan right now, like potentially down in Brandenburg is, and I'm seeing all the Walgreens close. They're closing, and the Rite Aids close, and the pharmacies it's kind of a stealth thing. You can watch it. You can watch these things close. Well, what you going to do if you can't get something to help yourself in the event you can't get, say, like, I don't know, the Sudafed they've locked down, or the other things to make you more comfortable or actually get rid of things? You need to know how to use the compounds and the plants and the things that God provides for you to have food and also create medicines. It's actually a very easy thing to do. And I'm a doctor disser. I don't like doctors because my journey through this was an abysmal failure, and I walked away from doctors years ago because my choice was that these people they put you on on a little treadmill, on a medical treadmill, and they have no interest in curing any of us, none of us. And so that is my personal opinion on this. The system is geared through insurance companies and such to create a income stream of above $250, well, with inflation, $259,000 per patient who is a cancer patient. So you're just a dollar amount to them. And so we're going to have to really question everything and maybe even go our own paths a little bit. And there's a lot of ways to do that. So kidney stones. You want the recipe for kidney stones?
Sure. No, let's not do the recipe for kidney stones.
Well,
Let's let everybody wonder.
Yeah.
I was just contemplating the structure of your question. You said, "Do you want the recipe for kidney stones?" And I'm like, "No."
Okay. Recipe
If you want the recipe to cure kidney stones, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Recipe to clear out kidney stones. Now, what I was told, and this has been used in many times, and people around me have used it, and it absolutely works. If you can physically pass a kidney stone, so I mean, you got a kidney stone the size of a gopher head, you can pass it. Okay, that's just the way it is. But if you have,
everybody knows how big a gopher head is.
Well, yeah, it's smaller than a gopher.
So sorry. So at any rate, I'll try to get away from my little obscured made up references here. But if you've got an apple-sized kidney stone, or if you've got a walnut-sized kidney stone, you ain't gonna pass it. Okay, you're gonna have some help with this. However,
I am a smallish person after all.
yeah, if you're smallish, usually you're smaller, right? So if you have to pass, if your body can physically pass it, this will work according to everything I've seen, the evidence I've seen, firsthand evidence with people around me, as well as a group of people, Native Americans, that says it works every single time.
So now cue the broadcast getting cut off to make sure the information doesn't get out.
Yeah, watch. It's gonna watch this thing. Watch this puppy tank, and if it does, that's okay. I will post it to my Telegram channel and such. So it'll be there. You can find it. So you take an orange, and you take a lemon and an orange, a whole lemon and a whole orange, or a whole orange and a whole lemon, and you cut it in half, and you put about half a gallon in a pot of half gallon of water in a pot, and you put it on your stove, and you throw those half of the lemon and half of the orange in there, and you get 4 silks off of 4 ears of corn, and you throw that in the pot with the water and the orange and the lemon. And
so the orange and the lemon is that you cut it in half. Do you only put half of the orange and half of the lemon in there, or do you put both halves in?
Both halves in with the skin, because the oil comes from the skin. And this is a good thing to talk through, because sometimes you forget that it's not just the recipe, it's why. There are oils within the orange peel as well as the lemon peel that work on your body. So you're going to cut them in half, and you're going to throw this in the water, and you're going to put the silks of the corn in there, and 4 sprigs of mint in there, and you're going to bring it to a boil, and you're going to simmer this, and you're going to simmer it for a long time. So like maybe I don't know, a couple hours. Just let it simmer for a couple of hours. You're getting all the oils out, you're getting all of the good compounds in this out, and you're gonna take it off the simmer, and you're gonna let it sit there until it cools down. And then you're going to pick up the orange and the lemon with what's left of the skin and the inside and such. You're going to squeeze it. You're going to squeeze it out when it's cool enough not to burn your hands. So squeeze it all out and squeeze the things in there out, so you're getting all the elements of this out as much as you can. And then you're going to strain that. And then you're going to take that strained juice and water that you have, and you're going to put it in. You should have about a half a gallon of liquid there. And you're not going to sip on this during the day. You're going to drink it, not to the point of making yourself sick. And you can know how many fluids you can take in at a time. So check with your doctor first. If you want to do that, you go ahead and check with your health professional, right? There's my disclaimer. But go ahead and drink it, and drink it down. Don't sip it over 6 hours, but you want to drink this like you would, anything else. On an empty stomach works really well. And then just wait, because I had a guy that worked for me that did this, and the first time he did it, and he was in terrific pain. It didn't dislodge everything the first time. The second time he did, all of the kidney stones came out. Couldn't believe it. And so you may have to do it a couple of times, and drink it like you would some juice. You're going to drink it. You're going to start drinking it. Here's my glass of water here. So you're not going to. No, not a baby sip. You're going to go in and start drinking. And you may take a few minutes break and wait and such. This is how I would take it. And so at any rate, and it's my opinion and such, but you should check around and make sure that you check with your health professional if you feel inclined to do that before you try something like this. But this is all food. It's all food. So if you take it in like you would food, and consider it to be food, then you dose it the same way you would food. So same thing with if you want to do a fenbendazole cleanse or anything, you have to look at the dosage and what you need to take to get the job done without hurting your body. So right now I'm doing a fenbendazole cleanse, and I'm doing 444 milligrams a day, 222 in the morning, 222 at night. And I can tell you that there's absolutely a change. And that's why I lost my voice. If you still hear my voice is a little bit funky. There is changes that I noticed immediately from this, and a lot of it had to do with my lungs, which is really interesting. My lungs and my throat. Another guy I know is on an ivermectin cleanse right now. He's out in Colorado, completely lost his voice for a while. So you had to take a little bit of iodine in order to take some of the symptoms down and such. But it's all there. You just got to be willing to look into it yourself. Do not trust Donna Brandenburg. Look into it yourself. And unless I'm sitting right next to you as your mother in a mother capacity, which got a point of view mother of the whole planet, just so you know. That's my job here. But unless you have somebody that's walking right next to you, you're going to have to take the responsibility of the outcome of the choices that you make. Yeah, we've always had that, but the medical community, the medical mafia, has done a bang-up job of shutting people down and telling them not to think. And when I tell my story, not for reasons of manipulating anybody, but to tell you what I went through medically, you're probably going to be really shocked, because I firsthand experienced this and basically gave them this little trophy.
You knew that was coming.
You knew that was coming, didn't you?
Yep.
And walked away.
I have a question about your recipe.
Mm-hmm.
When you said mint, are you alluding to peppermint or any kind of mint? Because there's lots of mints in Michigan. We have wintergreen.
Yeah, I've done spearmint.
Lemon mint.
I've done spearmint because I grew it. And so spearmint and peppermint, either one of those, I think will work just fine.
Okay.
You could, for that matter. I mean,
I don't have kidney stones that I know of. I'm just writing it down for future reference.
Well, if
I know somebody that.
If we go into a time of a crash of some kind, this is arming you with something in case it goes down that you may want to try. And if you're in a crisis situation or an emergency situation, and you think about this, and let's go back just to the purse lane right now. Where do I get food? All the grocery stores are closed. Food, and I always go to complete is zero, ground zero. If something happens, what do you have if you hit ground zero at any point in time and you have nothing that you normally count on? Well, you got what's in your head. And you can start assessing the situation and then build the plan based on the assets you have on at hand. So if you have one asset that you know about, purslane, and purslane grows in the summertime, so there's none on the ground right now that I've seen. So purslane and such, but there's other things that are growing right now that are kind of chip shot. So, but you have to know what's growing at which time of the year and how you process it, what part of the plant you can eat and such. Anything a horse can eat, you can eat. So there's and not all plants that all the animals can eat can humans digest well. Like we can eat grass. You can eat grass just like some of the other animals, but it's going to upset your stomach a little bit. So you're not going to want to go out there and graze on grass. I'm going to just tell you that right now, other than besides the fact it sucks. You know, it doesn't taste good to us, but you can say, okay, I know I've got these nutrients that I can get here, and maybe I'll just eat a little bit of it and such, but I wouldn't recommend ever eating grass and for a number of reasons, especially in mass. Can you chew on it? Look at the farmers. They're always chewing on weeds out. If you go out in the farming communities and you'll watch people, and this was years ago, you see them, they'll be sitting there chewing on a weed, you know, they just chew on a weed, just something to do. You know, and I'll give them kudos because it's better than smoking, you know, because there was smoking back then. But, you know, chew on a weed and they knew what it was. So any other questions?
I kind of wish, too, that we could bring back some of the current species that used to be native here in Michigan and were purposefully eradicated to save the lumber industry.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of good nutrients and health effects from the ribes family of fruiting bushes, and that would be great if we had a few more of those growing. But in a lot of cases here in Michigan, there's a lot of counties that you actually have to have a permit to grow them.
And there's kind of a good reason for that. Okay, I want to put the good reason out there is that that between currants and like pine trees, like the white pine tree, they will share back and forth a fungus which destroys the trees. So there's a separation in the old varieties of the currants.
Yeah, but
And so there's
anymore,
new ones though that they should deregulate this and allow the fungus resistant varieties to flourish.
yep, the white pine blister rust resistant currants. There's several species of those, and it would be great if we could bring some of those back because, boy, they're incredibly nutrient dense.
It's like the pawpaws, Michigan pawpaw. There's like 52 varieties of pawpaws. Didn't know that. And I don't know if anybody knows that, but each plant creates about 50 pounds of fruit in a season. Now, the problem with it is it's hard to preserve because it's called custard fruit. And so you have to, when it's ripe, it's going to come ripe all at the same time. So you're going to either have to have a way to freeze it or preserve it, or freeze dry it, or you might be able to make like an applesauce type product out of it that you can put on top of other foods or eat by itself. I don't know, but that's one of those things that I'm going to be planting this year. I got my plan, I got my source, I got the type I want, and how I'm going to be planting that this year because it's all awesome. Just curious, you know.
Mm-hmm. Another native Michigan fruit. And yeah, there's a bunch of good native Michigan fruits and plants that have over time just become less common because they're not the big agricultural crops.
Well, I want everybody to think about this. All of the corn subsidies that were put in place in order to produce ethanol, that was basically a farm subsidy that benefited no one. And I want you to think about this. If we could trade out these big ag crops that are almost wholly owned by foreign interests and big corporations and go back to local farming and know how to do this really well, we control the food supply and keep the poisons out of it. But think about this switchgrass. Switchgrass is a native plant. You plant it once, let it grow. You don't have to irrigate it because it's native, just exactly like the pawpaw, how the pawpaw works, because it's suited for the area. Let it grow. You don't have to use herbicides or pesticides on it because it's already built in because it's native, and it will flourish in those areas. And you can mow it at the end of the season, just like you would as any other kind of a crop, is mow it, pick it up, just like you would a hay or something. And guess what? Ta-da, there's your ethanol source right there. So if we got rid of all the corn subsidies and nonsense, which has a negative, benefit because it costs more to produce it than what it produces. So it has to be subsidized. The corn has to be subsidized. And so if we went back to switchgrass and go back to managing the way that this should be, think about this. You don't have to irrigate. That just cuts the cost right there. You have no irrigation cost. You don't have to use any herbicides or pesticides on it. Better for the ground. We're not poisoning ourselves with glyphosates and such.
But what about the big corporations buying up the water rights and the ability to produce glyphosate?
Yeah, there you go. It's all tied in. And then you mow it at the end of the year. You don't have to plow. You don't have to disc. You don't have to do all of these normal things that they have to do. I mean, they're not doing a lot of the plowing and disking right now with no-till because they just pour all kinds of chemicals on the ground to kill the living soil. And so we don't get the nutrients out of it, and you mow it, you take it off and you turn it into ethanol. And there's so many uses that you can do with that without poisoning the ground. Same thing with hemp. We could do the same thing, with growing hemp. You can make plastics out of it. You can do all sorts. The plastics are 50 times stronger than what you can make out of petroleum products. And not petroleum, out of steel. So now you cut down the steel, some of the steel downsides of steel and that sort of thing. I mean, there's all sorts of these things that we can do. So I look at this whole system falling and I'm like, bring it. Today's a good day. God, bring this whole system down, because you know what? We're going to stop seeing our country and our countrymen, our friends and family poisoned because they just don't even know better.
Yep.
What say you?
Well, I just, every now and then I think of the Walking Dead series, because there's an abrupt ending of all resources provided publicly. There's no more fuel in the tanks. There's no more groceries being delivered to the stores. There's no more pharmaceuticals unless you raid a store or someone's house, and then people fight over what's left behind. If somebody has an injury, there is a tough time of looking for antibiotics, and then who knows how to use it. There's not a lot in that series where you see somebody who is a scientist type who survives the initial wave of horror. So there's no botanists on The Walking Dead. There's no agriculturalists. There might be a few farmers. There was a farmer at one point, and he lasted a while, but and he was able to teach some people about farming, and they ended up producing a community that could sit in one place and farm with a protected environment to keep the hazard out. But, that kind of prepares my mind, at least, what would happen if there are no resources for whatever reason? And what have you got to rely on? What's in your own neighborhood? Is there a pharmacy?
How stupid people got during the toilet paper test.
Yeah, how long does all those resources last? When the pharmacy or the grocery store gets broken into, that's not perpetual. Once it gets raided out, there's nothing left. And over time, then suddenly you have farming communities with a few horses that they've managed to save and learn how to use the hard way. And if that would ever happen, which you've talked about from time to time, then this knowledge, what would potentially last as books? You wouldn't have the internet to go and research like I've been doing.
It's critical that we know these things. And also I've been working for years on figuring out how to bring semis full of food into areas. And I'm kind of working on a bunch of projects all at the same time right now. One of them is creating communities or ways for small communities within about 3-mile radius in order to, but not just even a 3-mile radius. That was something that a friend of mine that we were talking about would work very, very well. But small communities that you could really, yesterday I was talking to somebody and realizing the need for companion industries for farmers. And so I'm like, well, there's so many easy ways to do this. It's incredible. But that goes back to decentralizing and localizing the production into, say, cottage industries. The only thing that they would have a problem with that I can see is the supply lines. And so somebody who's done any work on supply lines or raw materials and such would be real necessary to get them to the cottage industries, and unless it's locally. I mean, there's certain things that you can't get in certain areas, just like that are the raw materials there. You're going to have in areas of Michigan, we have a lot of clay in Michigan in different areas. A lot of clay. Believe me, I grew up in a gravel pit, and the different stones and such. So you have these deposits, just like you have oil or petroleum deposits, crude or natural gas. There's all sorts of these natural resources, but they're not like, you don't just like drop a drill in anywhere and hit it. They're in different areas. Same thing with, like, say, granite or marble, or I mean, we can go into this, just all sorts of elements that are out there. Well, where do you find them, and where is it the easiest to find them? Do you need them, or can you find something like and this is a bad example because I'm jumping from like a mineral or elemental discussion into something like the rennet. If we're thought to think about rennet for making cheese, but you can do that out of plants. And so to look at all this stuff, how do you replace what you don't have locally? Is there a way or a process you can do that? Or do you need to have a supply line to somebody who actually has those resources in order to make trade?
Yep, the logistics of a lot of that stuff is certainly an important element of that. And kind of going back to the whole mineral thing, I find the whole idea that a lot of the there have been artifacts, Roman artifacts, which were made out of copper, that the only way that they could have made those out of that copper, the only place on Earth that had that particular mix of copper was in northern Michigan.
Yeah, it's Michigan because it's a special kind.
Yep. It's super high purity copper nodules from northern Michigan. And it's like the only place in the world that has that particular metallurgical mix to it. And they found this in ancient Roman artifacts. So think about that, you know, you think of logistics being kind of a modern thing for the long distance transportation and being able to trade very, very long distances for resources. But think about that, doing transatlantic trade in the Roman era.
It's pretty well proven that was going on.
There's
Just
a lot
like,
of that they try to refute that because
they don't want
really, well, they want us to think that ancient peoples were stupid, and they absolutely weren't. But yeah, that's one that, I mean, think about setting up that supply chain for taking copper mined in northern Michigan and getting that over to Italy.
Well, we don't
And
even
then
have
making
the
it
technology
affordable.
to build the pyramids that they did. I mean, how are you going to build the pyramid or Solomon's temple? Though we don't have the technology today to do it.
Yeah, people in the past weren't stupid. If
I
anything,
think we've gotten dumber, is what's happened.
I would agree.
We've gotten way dumber and lazier too.
I would agree. One of the most impressive feats of modern engineering that I can think of is the transition from black and white TV to color TV. I still don't understand how in the world they worked out all the math to make that work. It's amazing to me that they were able to do that. And nowadays, there's a lot of technology nowadays, but a lot of times we solve problems now by brute forcing a solution through greater computing power or greater industrial capacity to be able to work with a low yield process, or, you know, that kind of thing. We just waste a whole bunch of resources making something when, man, there were some incredibly creative uses of various precursor technologies back in the past. And if you study those, it's really interesting.
Well, look at the batteries, the lithium batteries and such, and you know, all the cobalt that they're mining. How many tons do they go through to get cobalt out of these mines? This is absolutely absurd. And here's my question. Okay, I'm just going to be like, throw this against the wall and see if it sticks here, because never really talked about this again. But what other resources are they obliterating, going after one particular mineral there that they don't even maybe know is right under their nose? So they destroy all of it just to get the one thing, because somebody in the green, Save the Whales, eco-Nazi group there hasn't really thought this thing through. So they grab the headline and go, oh, you got to do this, and somebody's funding it, right? Because it's a money laundering through the green initiatives out there. And so how much are they destroying just because that's where they're going for the money, not the long game? They're not playing a long game. They're playing a short game, and that ends in destruction.
Well, it's like I don't think the lithium ion battery powered vehicles are a good idea.
It's a bad idea.
I'm not anti-electric vehicle, but lithium ion batteries are really, if you're going for sustainability, they're a terrible technology, because they're going to wear out, and that's where most of the cost of the vehicle is when you end up having to get it repaired down the line. They
can't even sell them without the subsidies. It goes back with ethanol. Ethanol is a negative product.
Yeah, and then
you look back without subsidies.
You look back in the past, we had nickel iron batteries around, early 1900s. We had electric vehicles in the early 1900s that ran on nickel iron batteries. nickel iron batteries are so much more durable than lithium ion. And a lot of those batteries from, around 1900, some of those still work. It's you have problems with the leakage currents on them. But boy, if you were to build an electric vehicle with nickel iron batteries instead of lithium ion batteries, a nickel iron battery powered vehicle would be a great thing. You could charge it off of a whole bunch of different sources, just like you can with, pretty much any electric vehicle. But it would be something that you could use darn near indefinitely. It wouldn't be a forced, planned obsolescence kind of a thing when the battery hits end of life in, just a few years.
What about a hydrogen fuel cell? And
Yeah.
some of those, the water the
Hydrogen fuel cells,
Yep.
alcohol fuel cells.
Yes. And they're not even talking about that. And if you could do like an alcohol fuel cell or something, you can source it locally.
Yep.
That's what they want. They want to continue to centralize so that they can turn everybody into their little ant farm of taking advantage of. That's what's going on here. Well,
and alcohol
guys,
fuel cells, what do you get as a waste product? Vinegar.
we'd have really clean streets, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
So there you go. Well, guys, how about this? Let's wow, it's 11:30. This is amazing. You know what? I love sitting here talking about this with you guys. It's kind of fun to be friends.
I was waiting for you to look at the clock. I'm like, this is fun. I ain't saying anything.
Yeah, well, that's just it. I went on my little farm tour yesterday, and I ended up at a place where they're making cheese, and they do cheese making classes, and I'm like, I'm doing the next one because I want to see exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I could post the pictures I took from it. It was pretty amazing, the different types of cheeses that they had, and they had rigged up their own weighting system for pressing out the cheese. And you want to know what was crazy? So I don't know if everybody knows this, but we own a agricultural farm drain tile business, and what they used to press the cheese in, instead of like the traditional cheese wheels, they had these 12-inch dual wall drain tile pipes, and they throw it in there. They put their wooden wheels on top of it, or the wood, and then they've got a little weight that they just put on top of that thing and press it right down through the drain tile. So they've got the perforations to get rid of the liquid. I'm like, dude, that is cool. So one of those innovations that they put together, I'm like, whoa. So that was fun. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and take their class. I know a little bit about it, but not enough to put it into practice in any meaningful way. So anyhow, any last words, guys? Let's say a prayer and go on to our days. We've got problems to conquer.
Sounds good.
Karen?
Well, for me, like I'm glad we're having this kind of conversation, because I went down to the library and I checked out 7 books on gardening topics, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to grow and how I'm going to grow it this year with my husband, and I have lots of questions that are unanswered right now. But having a book in your hand for anything that you think you might want to do is a good thing. And I'm also reading dieting books, not dieting, but like proper diet for me. Like Wheat Belly is one I'm learning a lot from. I'm glad you were talking about the wheat, the Einhorn wheat you're investigating. They've been toxifying us through wheat for so long, and it's causing so many health issues. What can we do to avoid that? Well, we're going to have to change things up, but you got to educate yourself a little bit first. And that's what I'm in the process of doing this year. And so I'm going to add a vegetable garden to my meat garden, Donna.
Good. Hey, I'll give you a gimme. I'm working on some vertical gardens right now too. I was like, I've got way too much energy. I got to have something to do where I drive myself nuts, right? And so, so I've got, I'm going to be putting together some vertical gardens. If you want one, I'll give you one, and can provide you the compost and everything else you need to be able to grow things. And the nice thing about a vertical garden too, so like when you grow plants on the ground, great, you can do that anywhere, not a big deal, as long as if you got sandy soil, grow things like, I don't know, strawberries, that sort of thing. You need to know what kind of soil you have, but you can grow things on the ground. You're not going to grow root vegetables in a clay-based soil. You have to have more of a sandy, loamy soil for that. And so you got to kind of know what you're growing and what's their favorite place to be. Otherwise, you're going to kind of like mediocre results. But anyhow, use a vertical garden. If you can grow things like your greens, lettuce, anything that is, think about salad, any type of a salad thing. You get it off the ground just a little bit, and then the bunnies don't mess with you.
Mm-hmm. That's what we're thinking. We're thinking of a raised bed of some sort.
Get away
Starting
from
to plan
some
that.
of the cutworms too. They'll cut things off at the root, and those little buggers will cut it off just like they went through your garden with a knife.
Mm.
Diatomaceous earth. That's another thing everybody should have on hand. Get some diatomaceous earth, because that works phenomenally well for anything. You get
Great
some
stuff.
pests anywhere, you throw that down, and what they do is the bugs walk through it and they lick their feet, and it's kind of like ancient shell, and it cuts up
Do
their
that again. Let me get a screenshot.
they lick your little feet, and then they lick it off their feet, and it goes into their digestive tract and cuts up their digestive tract, so that that they can't. It dehydrates them from the inside out. Works real good.
Decent way to demite chickens too. Annoys the heck out of them if you just throw it all over them, but it helps with the mites.
Yeah, they dust themselves anyway, so we just like help them redust themselves. So anyhow, let's say a prayer, guys, and go on to our day. I can sit and talk to you guys all day long. I mean, we are in fact very good friends, and we could sit and talk all day long, and we're all a bunch of nerds. I mean, not just sort of nerds, we're like super nerds. So somebody watched me doing plane tracking the other day, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, you're a nerd." I'm like, this should have been evident, real. When somebody can get excited about a good pair of socks, you got a nerd on hand, right? So anyhow, dear Heavenly Father, thank you so very, very much for this day and giving us the ability to have wonderful friends around and people that we can walk through this life together and solve problems and have a great time playing. It really is playing. Taking it out of what am I going to accomplish? What do I have? And into, well, let's be curious and look into this. And we just love it that you've given us so many opportunities and things to look into. And it's like being on an adventure. It's like an adventure camp here, things that are beautiful, that are growing, and the animals and each other, and so many things to figure out and just be curious about. Thank you so much for all that you've given us and all you've done to us, leading us through, and the fact that no matter what happens now or in the future, you are good all the time. And we have nothing to worry about because wrath is not safe for your children. And we know that you're here protecting us like our good Father. And we thank you so much every day. We want to make you happy with what we do. We want to listen to your commands and the things you tell us not to do, because we know it's not because you're trying to keep us from things, but you're trying to keep us safe in a world that you've given choice. People have the ability to walk and do the right thing or the wrong thing. And you're giving us good guidance to not get ourselves into trouble. And we're very thankful for that. We never want to get in your presence and have you say, well, how is that working for you when in disobedience to not following your rules? We want to follow your rules. And obedience is always better than sacrifice. So we just want to obey what you're telling us to do, and listen to you, not because it's a action of subverting us, but because you're protecting us. And we thank you for that so very much. Thank you so much for this day ahead. Thank you for Jeff and Karen and Ralph and all the wonderful people out there like Charlotte and Rob and Leb and Hawks, and so many people that jump on the chat so frequently. And I'm very grateful for every single thing that they contribute and screenshot their posts quite often so I can keep track of it, including what Charlotte posted this morning. I did screenshot that. And we just thank you for the family that you've given us and the hearts that you've given each and every one of us to care about each other, that drives us into what we do every single day. And you've been a great friend to us. We want to be a wonderful friend to you. All glory and honor to you and everything. There's only things that in us that are good that will stand are the things you put there, because we didn't even know how to love. You had to teach us that, and you had to do it first to even show us what it was that we were supposed to do or what that looks like. And we thank you for the gift of love that you gave us, and are our Savior, Jesus Christ. And in Jesus Christ's precious name we pray. Amen. So here we go, guys. Off to the races here. We're going to have a day to explore. So there you go. Go to BrandenburgForGovernor.com because I'm the best non-conceder who has ever not conceded in the history of the United States until we write that 2020 and 2022 stolen, fraudulent, fake election that we had. And shame on everybody that had something to do with it, and join us so that we can throw this out in the light and fix this thing. With that said, God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Have a great day. Make it so. Make good choices. Make our Papa up there here. He's not really up there. He's kind of right here. But make our Papa proud of what you do today, and be a blessing to those around you. And we'll see you tomorrow.